Hello, everyone. My name is Tyberius D. If you are a fan of Counterpoints and you're just hearing about me for the first time, me and Connor have a lot of things in like. Hell, I've been at his house. I met the family. We're cut from a very similar cloth, so you're not going to find things about me that are like too far away from him. I'm a bigger nerd than he is. I do Star Trek, Star Wars, 40K. He's got a few different things that he likes than I do, but if you're looking for that same vibe, definitely come check me out. I do more geopolitics than he does. I look more at the wider world, what's going on in what's going on in China, which makes me think that they're not going to go as far as a lot of people think they are. The Russo-Ukrainian war, yada yada yada. People missed the biggest war of this century. People didn't even talk about it. It was in Ethiopia. It's called the Tigray War. Talked a bit about that, stuff like this. I can go forever on this one, but you'll see. Let's just see if you like what I have to say, and and give me a sub on YouTube. I was just complaining to Connor that I've been locked on my sub count over there. But yeah, thanks for seeing me once again, buddy.
No, my pleasure. And Tiberius and I go way back. We were pretty fast friends when YouTube and Twitch poll, I would say, was more of a formalized community, with the Reverie Roundtable and the Hippy Dippy being pretty like regular mainstays of the community. We had our own mainstay of the community for a while. I think we were like even though we were only like, a few hundred live viewers or whatever, we were between all the creators, we were still like one of the bigger political shows on Twitch for a little bit when the Twitch community kind of fell off. And that was the Maskoff podcast. That was me and Tiberius D mostly. But then we also had friends like Osiris and Nate Dallin and Samantha Badana, who would be regular hosts who would come out with us. Now, of course, with all of our busy lives, everything kind of fell apart, but it was a very fun year. I think it was a year, basically, where we were all getting together regularly in order to talk shop and talk politics and all that kind of stuff. So Tiberius has been a friend for quite a while. And then just to introduce myself to Tiberius's people, I hope some of y'all remember me, but basically, since we were hanging out on the Maskoff podcast, what happened was the Warhammer 40K content took off on my channel. It was just more algorithmically popular than the political stuff. I'm still wildly passionate about the political stuff. It's just, people like to hear me talk about Warhammer lore more than they like to hear me talk about politics, which is totally fine. I got weird heterodox centrist positions, whatever. But if you're into Warhammer, if you're into science fiction, if you're into violence or whatever, check out the Counterpoints 40K channel. That's where I do all my breakdowns, and sometimes we live stream about 40K. But then also, generally speaking, I'll live stream about politics, and then I'll post it to a political channel linked down in the description, which also, similar to Tiberius, I posted an essay and I got up to like 2,500 subs, and I was really proud of it. But that was like a really high quality essay, and I have not been able to do a high quality essay since. And as a result, I'm just sitting there because all I can afford to do is streams with friends and then rants, which is fun, but it's not as productive as I want it to be.
Oh, 100%. Like I want to share this a little bit because I haven't got to tell you this story. So my YouTube largely just stalled out, right? And like I've got a segment of different things. I had Maskoff there. I actually just deleted it very recently with most of what was on there because it's just kind of not up to date to the point where you're going to be lost in most of the context. So I just kind of rolled it out. And also some of it had enderax on it, which we need to talk about because good God, well, Jesus Christ. Okay, anyway. So outside of that, though, what happened was that my YouTube channel has largely been frozen. I've been making some content, but like most of it's just all been live streams, which is fine. But gets views, doesn't get subs, so we'll table that part. Where I'm at right now, though, is that some of my older content did start moving, and it wasn't my review content, which I put so much work into. It wasn't any of like the informative stuff where I'm like, hey, this is how like inflation happens, and this is how value is made in an economy. No, it wasn't even that. It was my videos autistically talking about like the interstate projects that were being made back when the infrastructure bill was done.
That's insane. You know, that sentence that you just said is insane. Because from my perspective, this just shows you how weird the content creation game is. And I do want to kind of narrow down on like our beefs with right-wing creators. I literally got blocked by Sargon of Akkad today, so I want to talk about that. But and enderax is a knife. Enderax is a knife wound to my heart right now. Yeah, so obviously we'll talk about that. But what's funny is that just what you said is the antithesis of what I would expect. And the reason why is because the vehicle that most people do when it comes to content creation is you talk about people or drama, because that's a good vehicle. Or you talk about like pop sci-fi, or pop subjects that people are interested in. And then they basically come to you for the commentary where you're putting like a spin on it or whatever. So you're taking something that's already popular, you're just putting your touch on it. And when I saw you posting the interstate projects fucking videos or whatever, I'm like, that is going to be a niche historical giga autistic audience of 50-year-olds in the fucking Midwest who like still, they know how to use like compasses and maps and like all that kind of shit. That's what I figured. But hey, man, if you found an audience or found that niche, that's actually wildly interesting.
So I have not done any videos on that kind of topic since literally the interstate bill. Or the interstate project back in 21. I maybe revisit it because this is the funny thing, and I'm just looking at this thread on the channel. Like my most popular videos, there's one that's a reaction to Peter Zion. I knew that would blow up, and it hasn't moved since though. But it is the I-49 project, the I-70X project, the I-57 project, and the I-14 projects, and they all have over 1,000. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like,
at 600 subs, and you're like, why are road people checking me out? What the fuck is
I'm thrilled about it. So there's a couple of people I have watched that do kind of the same thing. Mileage Mike, Bieber Geography, a few other folks like that. Yeah. I know there's an audience for it, but like I have the worst content for any of that. And somehow the algorithm actually threw me their way. So it was nice, but
that's a blessing.
I kind of need to make it. I need to translate that into something more, but that's a talk for another day because I know that's not anything you're related in.
No, it's fine. And actually, this is just my tip to any aspiring content creators out there. A lot of people will tell you different things, and different creators. Like I've heard Destiny and other creators be like, "Well, one of the most important things about content creation is being able to change your content to survive with the times." And I don't think that, like, I think that's probably true on a long term if you've been creating for 3 or 4 years and the ground has shifted underneath you. But I think especially when you're a new creator, you have to do what works. And so my problem when I was first starting out is that I had something that worked in like every category. And what I mean by that is I had a breakdown of Full Metal Jacket, like the drill instructor speech. That did well. I had a breakdown of Astartes when it first came out. That did well. I had like a movie review. That did well. But then what would happen? I had a lore video that got like 90,000 views, and that did well. But what happened was when I would post in those same categories again, because I was doing 5 or 6 different kinds of content, those new things, even though they were very similar to things that had been popular, they bombed. And I could not tell you. Yeah. I could not tell you why, because for me, like I put in the same effort, I put in the same scripting, I put in everything. And so basically what I would say, this is just advice to new creators. What I would say is create until you find something that works and then replicate and hone that formula over and over and over again. Because I think consumers are just like me, where you see something cool, you like it, you subscribe to it, and then you expect similar content in order to click on it again. Whereas if you have a channel that you're barely familiar with and you see 10 different kinds of content, you're probably not going to click on it because you're like, who the fuck is this guy? I don't even, I'm not even familiar. So just a little bit of advice before we start talking about the heartbreak with enderax.
True. Yeah, and I'm just going over my analytics for the last 20 days, or 28 days, is that the I-70X video is my #1 viewed over the last 28 days.
That's insane.
Released December 10th of 21, by the way. So
yeah,
it's cool.
Shit.
I love it. It's just
I'm
fucking
happy you found an audience though. That's great.
I need to retain them, and that's gonna be the issue because I'm not picking up much.
Start talking about fucking roads and geography again, bro.
I know, right? Yes,
but
hold on one second.
Of course, and I'll introduce people to what we'll be talking about. So, sorry, he's talking to his old lady, and I want to be respectful of that. So you guys are just gonna have to wait.
No, you're fine, dude. I just she was telling me there was something going on in the backyard. I'm just like, I don't have time. Is it anything that we need to call the cops on? Probably not. Okay, cool. Well, I'll just roll along.
Okay.
So
Well, then
I have so many
set-
notes, but go on.
Yeah, can I set the ground for my heartbreak with enderax, even though some people are probably coming over from the video that I just released?
Sure.
So Endernax, I mentioned this before. For those of you who are unfamiliar, he's like he marketed himself as a Christian Democrat. That was his like self-description when he was on like the Hippy Dippy or the Reverie Roundtable. And so he was not progressive in the slightest. Sometimes he would, misgender trans people, or he would call gay people the F slur or whatever. But generally speaking, like, he was still a relatively polite guy because he knew that he had to be polite in those circles. And then if you asked him, like, hey, what's your policy position? Do you want gay people or trans people to be back in the closet? He'd be like, no. That's like a waste of political capital and a waste of time. And the only reason why I'm a Democrat is because I think that, like, economic redistributive systems can be good to help build the social institutions that create a strong America. I'm not like laissez-faire economics. I'm not libertarian, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, this dude's pretty based. I talked to him a few times. He's a great guy. And then he comes back, like, he disappears for like 6 months or a year. And then he comes back and he's a fucking groiper. So he's fucking talking about like race realism and how the blacks have disproportionate, crime statistics, and Hispanic immigrants are going to destroy us all. And the gay and trans and Jewish agenda is going to destroy America. And we have to side with Hamas against the Israelis because we need to bring an end to the international Jewish agenda. And I'm like, what the fuck is all this shit? And he's like, this is who I really was the entire time. I was just hiding my power level, which, by the way, I don't believe. I don't think he was like a psychotic groiper the entire time. I think he just got I think he got pissed off that the Twitch and YouTube political scene was mean to him. And he just decided to pick a group of assholes because he knows he can capitalize off of their attention.
I've been thinking about that actually, because I've already taken a couple of hits because Samantha's been in my ear the entire time, being like, "This guy is like straight up closeted on a lot of this shit." And there was a few times where I just look at his body language and I'm like, something's fishy.
But he got edgier as he left, though. That was the thing. And so he was sorry, I won't rant for too long, but he was pretty chill for like a long time. And then I think the Dylan Burns beef happened. And then he just decided that he was going to be a fucking asshole as much as he wanted to do. And he started saying progressively edgier and edgier shit, which I'm sure Samantha Banana caught, by the way. And then we were like, oh, that's Endernax. He's just being crazy. Don't worry about it, guys. He's not a genocidal racist maniac. And then he's like, no, but I really am, though. And we're like, ha, 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 ha.
So, like, I'll put it this way. Either what he was doing then, it was the act, or what he's doing now is the act. And I cannot separate the two because I'm going to put it this way for the audience. If you guys are not familiar with this man, he is an extremely charismatic person. He has a way with words that I envy. And I don't say that lightly. I'm not jealous of very many people, but there is certain points where I'm just like, fucking hell. Like, he can ad-lib anything off of his, like, oh my god. Like, he can ad-lib almost anything, and I'm still over here, like, trying to put the words of my sentence into, like, the proper order so that it makes sense instead of bullshit spewing out of my mouth. And, like, I mean, you're a league above me in that by yourself, sir. But when you get to where Endernax was, like, the dude was a god. Like, I would love to see him just debate Destiny over and over again.
He's charming, he's fun, he's interesting, he's weird, he's got a cool story, which was basically like he was a fat, overweight, poor, doomer, lazy, pothead asshole, and then he goes to college, he gets his shit together, he starts working out, he becomes a Chad, he starts dating girls, he manipulates them, he realizes he doesn't want to be a piece of shit anymore, he gets his shit together, and then he tries to reconnect to Christianity and being like a moral actor. And and so, like, I love that entire story. What I don't love so much is the race realism, like, which, by the way, like, here's my frustration, because this actually happened with Sargon of Akkad. Can I, if we have more to say on Endernax, we can jump back and forth, but can I tell my Sargon of Akkad story?
Yes, please. By the way, like, let's not give Endernax too much of the light, because I actually encourage people not to openly, raise the prominence of people that are fucking up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so Sargon of Akkad, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the man, he was big in the 2000, I'd say like 14 to 18, like anti-social justice warrior wave. He was a British guy. He has an accent, and what he did was he just did anti-social justice warrior content, and he tried to carry like a pseudo-academic demeanor about him. And the reason why I stopped engaging with his content, he was in the same wave of Chris Ray Gun and Shoe on Head. And I like Chris Ray Gun, I like Shoe on Head. And the reason why I stopped engaging with Sargon's content is because I realized, I just like hit his playlist and click play, and I realized for 2 hours I had listened to him pedantically break down Medium articles. And for those of you who don't know what Medium is, it's a self-published website. So Sargon of Akkad went on the internet, found the most retarded social justice warrior progressive fucking articles he could possibly find, and then pedantically criticized them for like 3 hours. And I was like, this dude is picking on low-hanging fruit. I'm not going to fuck with his content anymore. So I dipped out. Next time I catch him is on the Joe Rogan podcast. He does like an okay job, but he keeps assuming that Joe Rogan, the 50-year-old B or C list celebrity who is famous for his like world's biggest podcast interview show, is familiar with autistic internet political drama. And so without context, he insists on narrativizing autistic internet political drama for Gamergate. And so it's like really awkward. And then he just tries to leave halfway through the show because he's like, I got a flight. And like, if I was Sargon's friend, I would choke him physically into unconsciousness. It's like, bitch, you're on Joe Rogan. This is like being on Oprah, and you're saying that you have to leave for your flight. Take a fucking bank loan out, you fucking retard. And so Joe like offers to pay for the flight, and then there's like this really awkward interaction where they're figuring out if he's staying or if he's going or whatever. And anyways, it's like, dude, could you imagine? Sorry, I need to learn to shorten my rants, but could you imagine like going on
impossible.
Oprah? No, could you imagine going on Oprah Winfrey and having like 5 million people like going to watch the content that you were just a part of, and you're like, oh hey, by the way, Oprah, I need to leave early. How fucking retarded do you have to be?
I'm not even going to start. I'm just not.
Okay, good, because I have more to say.
Okay, fair enough.
So
I will let you beat the shit out of this doll that you cannot actually hit, but I get it. But why did he actually block you for it? Like, did you just say this to him? Okay.
Yeah, so let's get there. So I've like vaguely, been aware of his presence running in the background. I've been vaguely aware that he created the Lotus Eaters, where a bunch of fucking British people bitch about the problems du jour. I've been vaguely aware that he's still creating content in the background, and I was vaguely aware of his Vosh debate, which Vosh and him had a debate, and I can come from the debate bro sphere. And in the first debate, what effectively happened was Sargon wouldn't define anything, and Vosh was too excited to call him a piece of shit that he was calling him a piece of shit before Sargon had articulated any part of his worldview whatsoever. And so it was largely viewed as like a Vosh L, I would say, because he kept trying to like grapple and create like Sargon as a bad guy when they hadn't even started the conversation yet. And I'm rebooting chat because it wasn't working before. So I'll see your guys' chat messages now. But that was my first impression. I think they did a second debate. Sargon did a little bit better. So and then I've seen him be, I'm just going to be frank, I've seen him be a smug bitch on the Sitch and Adam show. And the reason why is because he's a larger content creator. He's already established. He's more famous, blah, blah, blah. He's boys with Sitch and Adam. They're relatively speaking friends. His takes on Ukraine were dog shit. It was like, Russia, we fucking put pressure on Russia. We backed them into a corner. They had no choice but to invade. The global liberal hegemony is evil, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't like this motherfucker. Like that's pretty much where I was like, fuck this guy. Then the roll it all the way up to today. I'm kind of friends with Short Fat Otaku. I like him. I think he's a good guy. I think he makes good content. He likes Such an Atom. I like Such an Atom. And Short Fat Otaku tried to get me and Sargon to talk. And, well, Georgia Ba says, Connor's animosity towards Sargon was bizarre. Well, I'm literally explaining it to you right now. Then, today, or it was something about Sargon was like, I think the far right, who just want to protect tradition and family, are the good guys. And it turns out that the far left, who want to obliterate borders and something, 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 they're the bad guys. And by the way, this is in the context of him, like, rubbing elbows, but also fighting with Keith Woods, who's actually just an ethno-nationalist and an unapologetic fascist. This is with him, like, rubbing elbows and fighting with Nick the Knife Fuentes, who is also just fucking maskoff piece of shit. So he's saying, in my interpretation, these guys are the far right. He's providing cover to Nick Fuentes and fucking Keith Woods. So, you know, fuck that. So I quote tweet it, and I say, I just find it funny that it's lucrative, because I mimic his phrasing. I find it funny that creators are capitalizing on the black pills of their audience while offering no real solutions, blah, 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 blah. And he takes offense to that. Black pill is just like becoming nihilistic and thinking the entire world is going to end, et cetera, et cetera. And so I feel like Sargon, Nick Fuentes, Keith Woods, etc., they're basically spreading the narrative that the world is falling apart and we should basically all kill ourselves. Meanwhile, before you kill yourself, send me a $5 super chat so I can continue to tell you how the world is falling apart. That's the business model, effectively. And so I say that he takes offense because he thinks that he does a bunch of white pill shit on his show where he encourages young men to become the best version of themselves. That's fantastic. And he thinks that I mischaracterized him. We snipe at each other a few times. He blocks me. That's totally fine. This is almost the end of the story. I decide, you know what? Maybe I have misjudged Sargon of Akkad. Maybe he's more white pill than I think. And so as a result, let me go check out his content. I go check out the content on the lotuseaters.com. And I swear to God, the first episode that I click on, the most recent episode, I think, is them saying that because progressives want to export transgenderism to the Middle East and North Africa, jihadists, because of open borders, will come to England and they will suicide bomb normies. That was the white pill content that I watched. Put that episode aside. The next one I watched was the Dilbert guy, who we all remember, who basically said you should not live alongside black people anymore because they're violent and they're going to murder you. They went through all the progressives who Sargon and his hosts went through all the progressives who were murdered by black people in the inner city. More white pill content right there. Then the last one, which was the funniest, and I actually thought it was great, was he talked about the phenomena of black people not changing the batteries in their smoke alarms, which to me is hysterical. Like I enjoyed the entire segment. I liked the banter that they were having back and forth. But anyways, I am not filled with hope after consuming 3 Lotus Eater episodes. I'll leave it there for your reaction.
I'm not surprised. The problem is this model works. We've seen it on television. We've seen it everywhere, right? It's just people are like, what's the term for this? Human beings are really good at the alarmism, right? Where we latch onto that because it's that survival instinct innately in us. Where 9 times out of 10, or even 19 out of 20, there's nothing there. There's not a problem. But that one time we ignore it, the fucking lion ate us, right? Yes. So we're instinctively geared to pay attention to that. I get it.
As a matter of fact, can we? Sorry, continue.
Go. Anyway, I get it, but there's levels to where we are logical, rational humans who have this upper level cortex that does some work. We've built the atom bomb. There's levels to where even the average person, and I've seen the average person. Have you seen the average welder? They can do some really cool art shit with what they can do, right? You go to meet a bank teller, some of these people are fucking ass kickers at what they do. I don't think people are stupid. That's one thing I kind of like go up against you on. I think people are busy. I think people don't have the time or the patience to do a lot of the shit that they need to do, which is why I'm a Republican. I believe that we need those, those civically engaged folks who care about this, that are autistically like, hey, look, I need to figure out what this policy actually does, to go be the people who run for the fucking party. And there's your transition for you.
No, I appreciate you. Yeah, so let me share this. I don't want to eat crow on this, okay? I am getting on a plane against my own sense of anxiety for Christmas travels. And I really don't like getting on a plane when there's a war in Israel. We have a globalized society. So jihadists are like saber rattling about killing Israelis and Jews, and America is the great Satan and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to be anywhere near a fucking plane. You are gay and all of you know it. All right. Interesting.
This is why we don't pay attention to chat.
No, I want to pay attention to chat because I'm waiting for Georgia. They said that you are so far off the mark, and I said, I will be charitable and I will listen to it. But Jacob Smith, I wonder if you can substantiate whether or not I am gay. Do you have a study for that? Do you have a source that I am gay? All right, anyways. So I don't want to get on a fucking plane in the middle of like jihadist nonsense, but there is like a 1 in 8 million chance of dying in a plane crash, or like a 1 in 50 million chance of dying in a jihadist attack or whatever. So like I'm gonna get on the fucking plane. But if I die in a fucking plane crash, Sargon, you have my permission to make a segment about when your critics die for being like more sympathetic to like Muslims and Hispanics and shit. You can make that count. Jews own you coward. Okay, Jacob Smith, you're gone. Bye.
Yeah, all right. So what is the flight, just for like family shit, or is it like actual business?
No, it's family shit. So
okay, gotcha. This relates to something that I've just got on my notes. We won't hit it too hard because I know you want to talk about other stuff, but I watched your mortality video that you did with Johnny Scarlett and Erudite probably like 4 months ago. I finally just got to it because my backlog is huge.
Sure.
Knocked some of it out during Harvest, but the amount of which you care about your existence ending, like I get it to a level, but there's also levels to where I'm kind of in the opposite boat. I'm like, I swear this is
over.
I swear this is hell. Like I swear we're already dead. Like we're in hell. Like you cannot convince me otherwise at this point. We'll break that down at a later point, whether it be personal or not. I have no problem telling it to people, but it's just in general, like
no, I don't want to move on so quickly, but we can absolutely get into that for sure. Like because right. I am very attached to my life and my personality and my egos and ambitions and all that kind of stuff. I love a healthy chunk of life, but then also I do get tired sometimes where I'm just like, man, I could really use like a really long fucking dirt nap. So,
the part that really stuck out to me was the thing you said about like, I don't want to die, but like somehow have like the
thank you, Ollie,
response that like actually feeling you decompose. You thought that might be a possibility, and I'm like, number one, fucking creepy. Number two, that ain't happening, right?
I hope so. I hope
I guarantee it's not.
Yeah, I hope my consciousness is not attached to my decaying neurons. I hope not. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. So I don't think that's happening. I don't think it's even a remote possibility. But the fact that you actually have that in the back of your mind is not. I don't know how to say it. It's awesome in a way. Like I'm actually in a sense of awe that is a thought that you have.
Well, for me, so I'll justify that stoner thought real quick, and I'll try to catch chat up before I try to drag this back to the Sargon beef. But basically, Johnny Scarlett and I. And was it Erudite? Erudite.
It was Erudite.
Yeah, we had a conversation about like mortality and death and how we deal with death. Not so Erudite is a Christian. She actually believes in Christianity and hopes that there's an afterlife. I think Johnny Scarlett is either an agnostic or an atheist or something. I think she just thinks that when you die, you die. It is what it is. And then for me, I'm obviously trapped. I hope or wish that there's different planes of existence, or that I reincarnate as myself 36 billion years from now. Johnny Scarlett is they. Yeah,
Yes.
they're non-binary. So my excuse. My apologies. They sometimes present to me as feminine. So, anyways, point being that we were all talking about mortality, how we deal with it, how we deal with death anxiety, how we deal with mortality, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, my justification is that allegedly, this is something that I read, was that we are not just ourselves. We are not just the consciousness that emanates between our earballs. We are also made up of all the subconsciousnesses of the bacteria that are in our gut and all the like 14 trillion living organisms that are inside every single human being. So what I was thinking was that wouldn't it be an absolute horror show to transpose your consciousness into the 14 trillion living creatures that live inside you and then be cremated or then rot or then get, die in the ground and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, so basically I did... End of the story is I smoked too much pot and did too much acid in high school, and now I deal with mortal existential fear.
Has that been in your head for that long?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Okay, fair enough.
I've been scared of death since I was like 8, and I closed my eyes. I stopped breathing for a second, and then I was in a pitch black room, and I was thoughtless for a moment. And I was like, oh shit, that's what death is like. And since then I've been terrified of it.
Sweet bliss. Anyway.
Yeah, that is, as I get older and my body hurts more, that becomes more appealing.
Right. So you finally get to those 65-year-olds like, that's why they're ready to die. All right, got it.
It's because like existence is pain to the point that unconscious non-feeling becomes preferable to conscious pain. And so
Siddhartha was right. Life is suffering.
Yeah, so I think that there is something to be said for painful, because I've been in a lot of pain in my life. I think there is something to be said that like unconscious void or whatever can be preferable to conscious pain. That would be my assumption. But anyways.
I'm just for my own part in this. Like, there's so much I can talk to about this subject, but we won't drown it out. But I was about to say,
let's get into the right wing drama. That's what some folks are here for.
I know they are. I just I want to hit the outliers, because if we don't hit the outliers, we'll never hit them at all. You know this.
True.
So just to finish it up, I'll just be like, I struggle with this because my life has not been that much fun for me. Like, there's been moments of joy. Like, what is it? 2 months after I meet you, you're like inviting me to your house. I'm like, all right, cool, Megan. It was a great weekend. Like, thoroughly enjoyed it. But those kind of things have been too far in between, and I've actually got a lot of things that I thought I wanted in life, and I'm kind of struggling on, can I accept what I have? And I'm struggling to do so. Because like, if I take back, smell the roses, and listen to the hippie inside myself, it's like, I don't have it that bad. Like, I'm a single income household that's able to pay for like all the stuff that we're doing. Like, I check a lot of boxes where if, you go anywhere else in the world, they don't have half this shit. I can talk to my buddy in Florida on the internet. That's great. But there's levels to where, like, that Hoosier in me, the one that's a little bit more greedy, a little bit more, I'll put it this way, egotistical. Like, I am greater than this. I have an ability that I am not actually able to use or exercise, and I don't feel like I really did ever find my place yet. And it's mind warping and heart warping at the same time. So I have not come to terms with that at all. So like, mortality is a bitch for me at this point, because I'm like, all right, I'm halfway through my life. I'm actually gonna
now what?
Like, have one. Yeah, it's like, am I going to have one good decade where I'm like, all right, this was kind of worth it before it all goes to shit? Or, like, I've gotten to the point, and it's kind of an existential crisis into itself, but I'm like, all right, do I accept that what the hippie can accept in me, or can I get to a level to where I can accept where I am in both regards. And I don't know if I can do that because it's a struggle just to make sure the fucking bills are paid.
Yeah. And what I would say to hit that, but I do want to drag us back just because, you know, the people demand blood. With that, I don't think it ever ends. And the way that I've conceptualized this in the past is Omni Raid. Interesting. Hello. Thank you to the Raiders. The way that I conceptualize it is that there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I apply that as a guide to my life. So there's the physiological, the security, the social, the ego, and the self-actualization. And so for me, physiologically, I'm a fucking mess. But I try to eat I try to eat decent. I try to exercise some of the time. And as my life improves, I plan on exercising more. Which, by the way, as much as I've been talking shit about Sargon of Akkad, I do want to congratulate him for getting rich and then working out and losing weight. Good for you, honestly. Like, I'm not talking shit with that. I think it is impressive when people gain success and then they prioritize their own health. That is impressive. Then, when it comes to security, I've already maxed out that tier as well. I know how to shoot people in the face. I know how to wrestle. Like, I'm very paranoid. I do, you know, I try to take my security seriously. I don't like taking risks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my security tier is relatively speaking maxed out. My social tier, I wish I had less friends. Because basically, like, you know, I don't hang out with my real life friends that much, but my online world, there's probably a few dozen people that I love, but I don't have enough time to pay attention to. And so, you know, my social tier is maxed out. I also love my wife. Her and I fight, but we also have a lot of fun together. I don't want to give too much details, but let's just say that my wife and I, we were playing earlier and I jokingly slapped her and then she slapped me in the no-no area and then we both just laughed. And so like we, you know, we get on each other's nerves and we're annoying to each other and we joke around and all that kind of stuff, but we still horse fight and play as if we were just dating. So that was kind of like a reminder that we're doing okay. And then I love my kids as well. And so what I would say is that social tier is fulfilled. Then ego, self-actualization. That's where I would say I'm hearing you kind of struggling, where you're like, is this my ultimate manifestation of myself? Is this what I am truly able to achieve? And for that, my only advice is just conceptualize yourself as a, you know, 10-year-old, 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old. And then just try to fulfill your potential as best you can. And that's all you can do, really. Most of the world does not get to fulfill their dreams. They just don't. Right. So it is what it is. But
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, we can continue to talk about self-fulfillment and all that kind of shit. But I want to do drama, and the reason why I want to do drama, even though you don't like drama, is because people love drama, and so I want to talk about how some of the right-wing people are disappointing me, and as a result, I am frustrated. Yeah, and like we can bring this into electoral politics as well, because obviously there's a lot brewing over there. So bringing it back to Sargon of Akkad, he blocked me. I DM'd Short Fat Otaku, and I was just like, hey, listen, sorry I pissed off your boy. I wasn't really trying to piss him off. And also on top of that, by the way, like, if me saying that you're capitalizing off of people's black pills, and you're like, no, I'm not, and I'm like, okay, want to talk about it? And you're like, no, you're just clout sharking, and I'm like, you built your whole career off of shitting on people, who gives a fuck, and then you block somebody? Like, dude, that doesn't even qualify as banter in like the Twitch and YouTube political debate scene. That's like a love touch. So if you're blocking off of that, I'm assuming he just had a sensitive day or something. Somebody else was being mean to him or rude to him, and so he took it out on me. It is what it is. Anyways, so I called Lauren Southern just because I wanted some professional advice, and I was like, should I just be an asshole to everybody? Because I am so fucking sick of like pussyfooting with everyone, and then still like I give them the slightest bit of shit and I catch a block anyways. And she's like, well, Sargon is one of the most productive and kind and empathetic and white-pilled creators in the right-wing sphere. So you picked the wrong target to be a dick to. And I was like, maybe. But do you want to get into
Getting told off by
electoral
Lauren Southern.
shenanigans?
Yeah, we can hit all of it. I've got a couple of notes just from the conversation you had with, his name was Nevin Gusak? Did I pronounce that right?
Nevin.
Yeah,
I think you
if
guys
I
would
need...
be boys if you hung out, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, literally one of my questions here is this is somebody I need to be in touch with.
Yeah. So Nevin, his little backstory, he's a dude. He lives in South Florida. We've hung out once before as well. What is it? He kind of got into like local politics and people like him. He's articulated, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Grand Operational says, calling Sargon white pill. Jesus, things must be really bad on the right. Yeah. When I engage with the Lotus Eaters content, I did not find a lot of white pills. So yeah, that's my impression as well. Anyways. So, but no, Nevin's a nice Jewish fella from South Florida. He's a professional. He got into local politics for a while. He really likes geopol. He really likes history. He really likes knowing a lot of sources and knowing a lot of people. He goes out of his way to meet political figures and talk to political figures. So I feel like your guys' brand of nerdiness would probably mesh relatively well. Cool.
Set up the meeting. Cool. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I have outside of just criticisms for me in that note badge. But you guys were talking about the Republicans, and I mean, for me, Republican Party straight up dying.
How do you feel about the field?
Dying. It's just straight dying. Like I wish that was not the case, but it doesn't seem like anyone really has like I don't know how to put it. It's like no one has the. It's obvious as shit to me. The balance between what MAGA is bringing to the table, which they have legitimate points, versus what the old part of the party had as its staples and traditions. There is a reason why the old part of the party got literally cooed for the first time ever. And more particularly, like the big business interests that ran the party got cooed. That has never happened before. Like there's a reason that happened. But on the other side of that is that no one can flush out, hey, Donald Trump is absolutely fucking toxic to the general electorate. So is Ramaswamy, and so is DeSantis. And it's like it doesn't register to these people. The moment that Ron DeSantis said on national TV that he is proud of passing a 6-week abortion ban in Florida, he lost the general. And it doesn't even register. And I don't fucking know how to interact with that. Like I have so many problems with talking to my neighbors and even my friends and family and be like, hey, look, I know like there's plenty of things I don't agree with Joe Biden on. I probably agree with him like 65% of policy tops, but it like, Green New Deal is kind of stupid, yada, yada, yada. But he's not Nina fucking Turner. He's not like a crazy leftist. He really isn't. He's an old school Union Democrat, which I miss. I was one of those people that really kind of liked that about the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's and I actually see it melting.
Well, what are you gonna do when you wake up at 4 a.m. and you're 80, right?
Yeah, dude, run the country, dude. Duct tape. I've been joking about this for a while, but like duct tape his corpse to a fucking dolly and just wheel it out for fucking speeches, and then and then wheel him back. So like I'm joking and I'm not. So here's
88% chance he dies in a second term.
Yes. So here's my Biden thing. I think Biden, through whatever quirks of personality or whatever, he ran, people call it the uniparty. I don't know if that's like a fully accurate, like descriptive term. I think if anything, recent electoral politics has revealed that there are genuine differences between Democrats and Republicans. But if you were talking about like establishment Democrats and establishment Republicans largely having like a broad overlap on like geopolitics or defense or whatever, I think that he ran the United States as an institutionalist, and I don't think he was like an insane Democrat. He wasn't like Bernie Sanders. He wasn't like, COVID's gonna last forever, I'm gonna give you $5,000 a month to sit at home and jerk off. Like that wasn't his like policy. He was like, here's some money so you don't die, and I'm going to quietly let the money die so all of you fucks have to get back to work. That's what he did. He wasn't like a full-blown like commie or socialist or UBI or whatever. And good thing, too, because that inflation fucking hit like a bitch fucking 2 years later.
Yeah, it did, but I called it, so I'm not complaining about that. I got fucking more people.
I'm complaining a little bit because basically I was like, free money from the government and I can pay my bills. Maybe the UBI people are right. Maybe we can print endless money and have less economic activity and inflation is a fairy. And now I'm fucking paying triple what I used to for groceries. And I'm like, don't print $1 ever fucking again. Go back to the gold standard. I want to trade chickens. I want to trade chicken eggs with other beef farmers in my neighborhood, and I want to see raw material goods before we ever print another fucking dollar. That's how I fucking feel.
Well, the good news is I can promise you that printing money is not what did it. That's the easy part. No, but
wasn't it like was it the horrible lack of economic productivity combined with the printing of the money?
Okay, so there's 4 types of inflation. Most people don't realize this at all.
Yeah, I barely understood the first one like 6 months ago. So yeah, feel free to tell me the other ones.
Sure. So a lot of people lump inflation all into one go, and you can do that, but it's only on like the most general level, right? You have to break down what these inflations are because some of them you kind of want, and some of them you absolutely don't. So 4 types of inflation. Number 1 is asset inflation. This is your house. Some people put this in your car. Car kind of actually is in the middle of these two, or the first 2 that I'll get into. But anything that actually holds value, your stocks and bonds, anything, or an asset. Excuse me, I'm choked up here. I need some water, but I'm out. Excuse me. Anything that's going to, like, you can sink money into, and 3 years later, it's still going to maintain some kind of value, right? Mm-hmm. That is asset inflation. This is the one that we have been fucked over with for 40 years. This is why a house that was worth like $40,000 back in the 80s is now worth $400,000.
But
right?
Is that not just an issue of supply and demand?
It is largely an issue of supply and demand. There's also issues with how those particular markets are working and effective. But I'll simply say this: through the means of the government and through the means of just the boomers being in existence, that is the primary 2 factors of why we've seen that group go so high, is that you've had a massive amount of people who built out homes or bought homes back when, there was a surge. They built out the homes, they did what they needed to do, and now all of a sudden, you have our generation that needs to buy homes. We're pushing up the demand for it, but we've pushed it up so high we can't afford it.
Well, hold on. So I've kind of been playing with this in the back of my head, and I know we still have 3 other types of inflation to get through. But specifically when it comes to housing, I was kind of wondering because it largely feels like boomers are asleep at the wheel because we have a housing shortage and people can't afford homes and most people are renters and they can't even afford their rent and all that kind of stuff. And we have like these big commuter cities and the infrastructure sucks, blah, 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 blah. I could list on all the 10,000 things. But aren't we also looking at a demographic collapse? And so that's where I'm kind of wondering if it's like, are we not building new houses now? Because 30 years from now, the demographic rate is going to be 1.85, even in like mass immigration fucking countries. And as a result, like you don't want to have a whole bunch of dead cities where you're basically like knocking shit down because it hasn't been occupied or used in decades. That's kind of what I'm curious about.
So the good news is, at least by American demographics, we are not bound for a collapse. And I mean, even the guaranteed, like we cannot hit this point for at least another 6 years.
So we should build housing for at least another 30.
Well, we are. Okay, so like certain areas that are blowing up in the country, the I-75 corridor between Dayton and Cincinnati, the 65 corridor south of Indianapolis, you go anywhere around Nate Dowland's neighborhood, it's just build, 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 build. We are absolutely doing this. The problem is, and this gets into the number 2, and I'll hit this just in a second, a brand new house is still fucking ridiculously expensive, even if it's mid-level housing. It like they're building these mid-level houses to where they're supposed to cost something on the order of like $80,000 to $100,000, but when they go up on the market, they're worth like $200,000 to $400,000.
Of course,
even though they're like lower in quality stuff, right?
Or even in the butt fucking middle of nowhere, yeah.
Yes, and part of it is a supply problem, part of it's a demand problem. But the number one thing here that people need to seriously get into, and I know I bitch about the boomers, but this is one of those things that like millennials and boomers need to realize they have different diverted interests here. Boomers want their property prices to be fucking astronomical because either they can rent it out, they can sell it, or they can maintain the equity in it until they need to get rid of it for their retirement, right? So all of that makes them want to push everything up through the roof. Millennials are on the opposite hand. We are in our 30s, largely just all in our 30s, right? The oldest of us is what, 43
A lot of
this
people
year?
are praying for a collapse or their inheritance. Yeah.
Kind of, yes, because like we are too low on the income threshold scale, particularly after the fact that we've had 40 years of zero labor inflation. We'll get to that in a moment. But because we were in this situation, we can't afford even mid-tier housing. Most of us can't. My house was literally 40 grand, and if it wasn't that, I wouldn't have been able to, to get it. I'm trying to figure out if I can get 80 grand at some point, and I don't know. And like most of that's a fixer-upper kind of shit. Excuse me, dying. But anyway, long story short.
Yeah, keep it punchy because I can feel the. Okay, we do not have to be. I just want to say this. I don't want to be slave to chat where it's like I see 5 people disappear and I'm like, oh, like they're getting bored. Let me go ahead and turn on the fucking you know how they have those like video game play where it's like characters like running or whatever for fucking Zoomers because they have ADD and shit and they can't pay attention to a complex concept for more than 30 seconds. I don't want to be like that, but I also do want to keep it like efficient and punchy. That way people like they get the meat and potatoes.
I might have to pass this off to you just for a second while I go get some water because I'm just choking up. But
sure,
I'll simply close out this first one because my chat's starting to scream at me, and I usually don't pay attention to chat for obvious reasons. Look, I'm not saying take from the older folks. Like only if you absolutely hate the older folks and you just want to tell them to go fuck themselves. Don't you can do that? Well, unfortunately, it only killed about a million boomers.
Only a few million.
Only 1 million, and like that wasn't enough. If you want to be like the sadist here, what it really comes down to is that millennials and boomers do need to have the conversation of, hey, we have divested interests. We want different things, and the problem is the millennials just aren't showing up to the party to be representative and say we want a fair deal. We want a square deal. We're cool if you guys want to have a retirement and make as much money, but like, you want your grandkids to actually have a house, right? Because we can't afford to raise them anymore. Like, it's that bad. Until we get that squared, it's not going to do anything. And unfortunately, as much as me and you love to talk about this stuff, how many millennials do you know that actually go down and campaign for, excuse me, how many millennials do you know that actually go down and campaign for local affiliates? And more particularly, who do you know actually at our age wants to run for office? Even school board, when our kids are in school, they don't even run for that. Like we don't, I get it. We don't have the time. We don't have the patience, but if we're not in the game, we're going to lose. It's just as simple as that.
Well, go get some water. And then I want to hear about the second kind of inflation.
Yeah, sure. And go ahead and entertain people with the dramas while I'm gone.
Well, I'm actually going to entertain them with policy. So somebody said, imagine inviting more Mexicans in. What a cucked mentality. You, sir, are not in the wrong chat. You're in the perfectly fine chat. But what I want to say is, I want the United States of America to annex every part of Central America down to the Davian Strait, south of the Panamanian Canal. Then I want to incorporate those places, and I want to go to war with the cartels. Then I want to subsidize Gran Colombia by getting the Colombians and the Brazilians to get their shit together and making substantive investment so they can create a southern United States of America, and then they can conquer and kill all the cartels and build a strong society. And then together we can form the Americas and tell Eurasia to go fuck itself. And then we can run our own hemisphere while being a pretty strong trading bloc, political bloc, money bloc, agricultural production bloc, et cetera, et cetera. Also, I'm married and I'm a happily married man, but some Brazilian women I have found to be attractive in the past. Sir, I would agree with you, but the USA isn't very good at imperialism at the moment. Sounds like a skill issue. Sounds like we need to start working on that. So, yeah. Well, this is a long shot. At least it's an idea. Yeah, I mean, it's better. Do you know what it's better than? You know what it's better than? It's better than letting South and Central America wallow in poverty and misery and failed states, and then just letting people basically have the option of either sitting in a criminal, decrepit shithole or traveling 1,000 miles and having like a 95% chance of success, but then they can show up to the United States and they already have infrastructure. There's already job opportunities. The police are infinitely less corrupt. Their children will be citizens. They'll have access to high quality healthcare. Like, dude, the push-pull factors when it comes to like Central American and South American immigration to the United States of America, it's too fucking strong. So the only way to eliminate the push-pull factors is to make sure that Central America and South America don't suck. So
Manifest Destiny 2 Electric Boogaloo sounds great.
Yes, yes, that's what I was talking about. But for the half of my chat has heard that before. Some of them are hearing it for the first time. But I do want to get through the different kinds of inflation so we can get back to our political contenders. What is the second kind of inflation?
This is commodity inflation. This is just basically the stuff that you're gonna, put up in for your gas, your food, what have you.
Is this also not just supply and demand, though?
They're all supply and demand in their own local markets, right? The problem is they will sometimes reinforce each other and sometimes they'll tear each other down, right? So your window is a commodity, but the house that it becomes an asset, right? And that you can see how that works, right? The Americans used to be the best in the world at making commodity inflation go through the floor. We built shit well, and we built it by the 100,000. But we stopped doing that because we developed something called just-in-time manufacturing. Are you familiar with this at all?
No, continue.
Basically, the long and the short about just-in-time manufacturing is that you have enough product to fill a semi-truck, and you're done. That's all you keep. So, whatever you sell... If you sell, you're a warehouse or whether you are a convenience store, it all has to fit in at least a semi-truck, and you can, vary that. So if you're doing 2 semi-trucks a day, you know what you're doing because you're Lowe's, right? Because of this, we do not have the manufacturing capability to just come in and say, oh, well, we're going to make 100,000 bolts for automobiles, and we're going to push it all out in a day. In fact, we've done the exact opposite. We've made it to where instead of having all these generalized parts that you can put into fucking everything, we put a bunch of specialized parts. So when you have that Ford car or that GM car, you have to go to the GM technician to get your GM, special parts fixed. They're really called captured parts, right? This isn't everything. John Deere does this.
Isn't this retarded, though?
It is absolutely retarded, and we need to kick it in its ass. Because... the funny thing is, even with China making everything, they still do this. They have their engineers design shit so that only they can work on it, which makes them a limonized monopoly. So they can push up the cost to where they have 100% markup on everything, and they do.
And
literally, go to your service.
So does this relate to inflation just because they can artificially control the demand for their objects by making them less compatible, so there's less competition?
That's huge, but yes, that's one of the major drivers in my mind of what's been going on. The also part is that just-in-time failed because we rely on the world to do everything now, right? So you have the ore mined in Australia, it goes up to Malaysia to be refined into a industrial steel product. That steel is then shipped up to China to be converted to a number of things that you use every single day, right? But what happens if one piece of that chain breaks?
Mm-hmm.
Everything goes to shit. You don't have a car. Because even if you have 99% of the parts, if you don't have that last 100, the microchip, particularly last year was the big one. If you don't have the chip, the car doesn't turn on. And basically, I called it. Sooner or later, we were going to have a security problem where somebody was not going to be able to get things from A to B. Well, we had COVID. We now have Iran openly seizing tankers, and I don't know how the price of oil hasn't shot up through the roof. We've had the Russians invade Ukraine, which I don't know how that hasn't pushed the price of wheat up through the roof, but it hasn't. It really seems like in my mind, we are not coasting on the rigidity of our systems. We're coasting on the backup plans. And sooner or later, something's going to happen, probably this decade, to where something completely breaks.
Yeah.
If I'm correct on that, go ahead.
Oh, no. This is kind of why, relating it back to earlier, these problems are so complex, and I understand they're like drier for most people. Like I've seen Astronaut Farmer be like, the right to repair is absolutely a huge issue. I see some people talking about the cars. I see some people talking about the microchips, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is that, like, watching black people beat up a high school kid, and then talking about how blacks as a demographic are more violent than whites, that doesn't solve immigration or national security or inflation or any of that kind of shit. It's just a cute way to monopolize your fucking attention in order to get fucking super chat donos, so those people individually can bitch about those fucking problems. They have no fucking solutions. The solutions are like, eliminate immigration. Like, eliminate immigration. And it's like, dude, like, eliminate immigration would only happen if we legitimately had a social collapse, which, by the way, you're pushing for, and then we had like a pseudo-fascist dictator get up there and be like, the browns and the blacks are the problems, no more browns and blacks. And then you better hope that it stops there, right? You better hope that it stops there. And
you have to put machine guns on the border. That's the only way you stop it.
Sure.
And you have to have people who are willing to use it.
Yeah, nobody's really people were like acting like I wouldn't be for a secured border. I'm absolutely for a secured border. And then Cornelia says it's working well in Singapore. Well, hey, Singapore is actually one of my favorite civic models. It's a civic nationalist pseudo-authoritarian state where you have a lot of personal liberty. You can walk to the store relatively safely, you can go shopping relatively safely, you can start businesses, you can interact with your neighbors, you can go shopping, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're a fucking asshole and you fucking take out your gum and you throw it on the fucking sidewalk, there's going to be a fucking 5'2" fucking Han Chinese dude with a fucking blackjack who's going to walk out and fucking take you out from behind the knees and give you a fucking $500 ticket. I'm totally for that shit. I say we fucking hire a whole bunch of fucking 5'2" Han Chinese with fucking blackjacks to hit us in the back of the knees when we litter. But anyways, sorry, rant over. So hold on. So I kind of realized with the commodity stuff, you told us how we're fucking ourselves even harder with commodity inflation.
Yes.
What's the next class?
Labor inflation.
Okay.
How much did?
Yeah. Tell me about that, because that seems counterintuitive almost.
Okay, labor inflation is literally just the cost or cost of your labor just for people working for your firm. And there's two different ways that this goes, right? You can have like the mass labor of your entire country. This is largely a demographics thing. We haven't really dealt with that before because most of human history has been a pyramid. You have a bunch of young people, you have lesser middle-aged people, you have lesser old people, few retirees. But because of modern medicine, to where we all live to 75, and in combination with something called birth control, we now have, in most countries, less children than we have old people, which is doing weird shit to labor.
Yeah,
the good news
is, how is labor inflation even possible in that scenario?
It goes to the roof if you actually get into that situation, as long as you're not trading with somebody else, because you have limited amounts of young people to do the work.
So the money, the wages that they demand, or the perks that they demand, is super inflated because there's a shitload of jobs that are available and not enough people to do it.
Fill, yeah.
Okay, so then we talk about mass importing people, which is kind of how we're dealing with it right now.
That's what they're trying to do. I actually argue labor inflation is the number one thing you do want. Because on the back end, while it does push up the demand curve for your supply or for your commodities and your assets, the one thing that we had seen throughout all of history up until about the mid-70s was that productivity and wages were correlated. They pretty much went neck and neck. And ever since then, it hasn't been. It's largely been wages have been half the rise of productivity.
And if I'm hearing you correct, it's because we've had... Obviously, we have a whole bunch of like labor-saving devices that probably have increased productivity, but along with the labor-saving devices that increase productivity, we've also had enough immigration into the United States of America and into Europe or whatever to make up for the what would normally be the pull push factors of demand and supply when it comes to wages.
Largely, yes. There's 3 or 4 things here that largely all coalesce together. Number one, the boomers. The boomers, when they came in, there were so goddamn many of them that they couldn't actually pay their bills back in, let's say, 1980, because even if you had a cheaper house, like this is the one thing I'll defend the boomers on. Mm-hmm. Yes, they had a cheaper house than what we could, but their interest rates were 18%. So mom went to work in levels that they hadn't been. And just to give you the numbers here, usually throughout most of our history, we have had 60% of our population in the workforce that were working. Mm-hmm. The boomers by 2000 had pushed it up to 68%. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, but for anyone who wants that numbers, today that would be 24.5 million people. Mm-hmm. That is the difference between what 68% and 60 is. Today, we are back to around 60. That's the good part. And you're actually now noticing, in the last 2 years, more labor inflation than we've ever had. Everyone's now going on strike, which you've been hearing about all year, and that's going to continue. I'm with them. Like, I get it. That trend has to be reversed in my mind. And we have to focus on, I know this is American first point, which me and Connor need to get into, but there is levels to where if you are a reliable trading partner to where we can make sure that you are going to give your shit to us in the quantities that we need it, when we need it, we can work with you. But we're done trading with people that are sacks of shit like China, like the Russians, like all these people who can literally just say, well, we don't like you anyway, so we're just going to, stop working with you anyway. All that shit needs to stop because, yes, whenever the Russians threw a war, yeah, we didn't have to pay the price up front for the gas, but because the Europeans had to buy the gas from us, that's why your gas tank cost you $4.50 a gallon last year.
Which, by the way, that was the first time that we hit $4.50 since the Bush spike that I can remember, since the Bush spike in like 2010. And that was fucking brutal. Literally, like
I never got it that high.
Well, I was in California.
We never got that high here. Yeah, like we hit $3.99 was the highest I ever remember seeing it get. And then it got to $4.50 with this last wave.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you guys, if Iran or Saudi Arabia actually go into a war because of what Hamas has actually triggered out, fucking forget it. Like, good God.
Yeah, stay home. Yeah. Literally find a work from home job and never leave your house ever again. So two points from chat. One of them is a question for you, and one of them is just a point. Somebody said that China's economy is slowing down and investors are leaving. Yeah, one of the interesting things that I've seen, it was even on like Bloomberg or Forbes, which was fucking insane to see, because that's like a mainstream outlet as far as I'm concerned. They were saying that it was originally predicted. Japan, correct me if I'm wrong, they were like the second largest economy on the planet. And there was like a bunch of stories in the 70s and 80s where it's like Japan is going to exceed the United States as the largest economy on the planet. And then the only way that we survived their GDP expansion was literally just population. They couldn't scale up to the scale of the United States. But besides that, they effectively would have had a larger economy.
That was the assumption. It turned out to not to be the case, but there was a few things that we saw.
I don't want to get into it like crazy hard. I'm just using that as a launching point for China. But if you have insights, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah. So the TLDR here was that people panicked like crazy because back like in the 80s, particularly
GDP growth every year.
It wasn't that bad, but it was like Japan was experiencing something on the order of like 8% growth every single year. They passed the Soviet Union back in like 1984 as the number 2 economy in the world. And we're like, oh shit. Like, cool, our ally is now number 2.
Doing this? That's fucking
but
bananas.
Yeah, it's an island that's the size of California that has 3 times the population, and it's literally growing at an exponential rate. And we're like, oh shit. And then what really kind of hit it for the American people was that in 1985 or 86, can't remember exactly what year it was, they bought Madison Square Garden for 3 times what it was worth. and it made national news, and it freaked out everybody. Yeah. Because what we saw was a glowing power on the rise that was like, oh shit, like, are we going to be able to have a good relationship with this economy? You know, is it actually going to overtake us? Like, what's the implications of that? Well, what we didn't know at the time was that most of that was actually scared money because people in Japan were doing the math. And basically the conversation was, we need to get whatever we can out as quickly as we can. If we have to pay 3 times the price for it, fine. As long as we can get a decent return out of it later, we're good. And then 1990 rolled around, and we all saw what happened. What largely happened, there was twofold. One, Japan is the oldest country in the world, and they ran out of people my age to do all the work. So labor started shooting up through the roof, while also their pensions started going up through the roof as well. So government surpluses became government expenditures. The cost of labor went through the roof because even though Japan is hyper unionized, labor was just able to take corporate to town every single time there was a labor negotiation, because it's like, hey, we still have to fill 1,000 slots and we're only getting 80 people to sign on. That was the conversation. So
based?
So
you're gonna pay me $100,000 for something I used to do for 45? Based? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Look, I there's parts where that's great. The problem is that it basically has put Japan in a rolling recession for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's not. They've handled it very well, but largely what they've done is they've just offshored everything to where Toyota builds more stuff here in the United States, and they just take the revenues back to Japan and keeps the system rolling.
Yeah, actually, so that's kind of my question, because this is something that we are going to have to deal with eventually, and so I kind of want to stop and kind of pick your brain on this. So for me, we have your family farms, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have industrial machinery. I don't know how many people they employ, but I'm sure they employ like a few hundred or a few dozen or something.
We're basically a 10-person operation.
10-person operation. And how many acres do you cultivate?
I can't say that out loud just because the family will beat my ass for doing so, but let me put it in this regard. I cracked some math on this not too long ago, and even with these people that aren't really full-time, they're kind of like, they're part-time within the seasonal part where it's like, hey, we're planting and we're harvesting, we need the extra labor. If you factor them in just as full-time, you say we're a 10-person operation. Each person is largely responsible for dealing with 10,000 bushels of grain per annum, right?
This is my point. So if 10 people are responsible for 50,000 bushels per annum, so 50,000 bushels a year for 10 people, I'm assuming this is a microscopically small amount of the farming industry, even though I'm sure it feels like a lot when you're working the fucking land. How does that, can we not have enough to, because humans are relatively simple creatures. We need food, shelter, power. Modern people need internet, and then we need clothes on our backs. And I mean, thinking about it on a week-to-week basis, that's literally it. It's like food, power, shelter. How? I know that we've always been focused on the GDP going up, but is it not possible to still have a relatively functioning and vibrant economy, but not always have GDP go up?
Yes. I mean, Japan's been doing that for 25 years. It's literally the dilemma that they've been having to deal with.
But why is it a dilemma if everybody has food, if everybody has housing, if everybody has access to technology, if everybody has I know they don't have kids, but they have the ability to have kids.
Right.
What's the fucking problem?
That's not the problem. That's where I think context matters, right? So the problem for Japan is not that they've been successfully managing their stagnation. Right. The problem is that they are guaranteed for not necessarily collapse, but they're definitely forecasted for degrowth in every regard. Because soon, all those people that were our age back in the 90s are going to be retiring soon. And they won't have a generation of workers. They're going to have 2 retirees for every worker in their country. And no one has an economic model for that. How do you handle that?
Well, this is kind of my question. So for instance, let's just go ahead and run this scenario economically, okay? And this is like degrowth, right? Effectively, like without intentional human degrowth, Japanese people have used condoms so much and have married body pillows so much that they now have 2 retirees for every healthy young adult who's going to work, right? That's what I'm hearing.
It's a decade out, but yes.
So that to me sounds like guaranteed housing for every person, because there's no fucking way, like if the retirees are moving on, if they're getting older and dying or whatever, there's no reason not for everybody to have a fucking house. that basically means that wages are going to be through the fucking roof because there's only going to be so many people working, so they're going to be competing for that shit. And then there's going to have to be a prioritization of the services that actually make society function. And what I mean by that is, obviously, agriculture is going to have to continue. Even if it's highly automated, you're going to have to make sure that you have enough food for your people. Housing is going to have to continue. And I'm just saying, like, the maintenance of housing, so plumbing and electricity and all that kind of stuff, those jobs will have to be filled because you have to maintain the structural infrastructure that allows people to live. Then when it comes to power, electricity, internet, all that kind of stuff, all those people, not only will they be in high demand, they will also just be like a facet of necessary life. And then you can, of course, add on like people like booze, people like food, people like whatever. So there's going to be booze and food and all that kind of stuff. So at that point, if you have enough labor to fulfill those needs, do you need a few thousand Chinese people, or not Chinese people, excuse me, 1,000 Japanese people to be manufacturing Funko Pops? Is that a required part of Japanese culture that they must mass import tens of thousands of immigrants from the Middle East and North Africa in order to make sure that the Funko Pop factory stays open?
They've already made very clear that immigration is not on the table. Like that is one thing the Japanese are in unison on. Like they are a very xenophobic people from the start.
But is that a problem in any sense of the word, as long as all the material needs of the people who live there are being met?
It is a problem for Japan in particular because you're talking about a highly importing nation when it comes to raw materials.
Sure.
If this was a nation that was like the United States, where we're self-sufficient in everything, or could be, we can probably do the math to make it work. But for Japan, you have to expend an incredible amount of your wealth, of your nation, to get the food or the fertilizer or all the other shit that you can't make in-house because of the fact you don't have massive deposits of iron ore or oil or any of this shit, right? So you have to either generate wealth in-house and export it abroad to gain the wealth to actually buy the things from abroad, which is what Japan's model has been since 1945. Or you ride out a collapse where either the old people eat the young people just to maintain a retirement until they die, or the young people eat the old people out of the regards that, hey, we're going to charge you an arm and a leg to make sure that you're actually cared for. There's a level of balancing that, but the problem is when you have to generate the wealth, that extra part to buy all the food and the fertilizer that Japan needs, no one's been able to make the math come out at all. That's the kicker.
So there, just to re-articulate it back to you, just so I could understand it, because I think that I am thinking of a closed system. So I'm thinking of a closed system, and as a result, I'm like, well, why if Tiberius and his 10 people can create 50,000 fucking bushels of, or excuse me, 100,000 bushels of fucking wheat a year. I don't know how much people fucking eat, but I'm assuming it's not a fucking 1,000 bushels of wheat every year. I'm assuming that's not the consumption rate of every human being.
You're right. Yeah, sorry.
No, please tell me if you know the amount of bushels that a human being eats in a year. I would be happy to hear it.
I don't have that number, but I will give you this. Japan's actually been really good at being a domestic rice producer, even though they have like very little farmland. Remind you, it's a mountainous country. Everything that isn't city, and remind you, it's the size of California with 3 times the population. And you've seen LA. It's a fucking urban sprawl, right? So 3 times the problem. They put everything they can undertill, and they're usually actually domestically reliant on rice, and they're good. But everything outside of that, like their pigs, their turkey, whatever else.
That's why they love fucking. That's why they love murdering dolphins, the fucking psychotic bastards. But hold on. So I'm actually gonna ask Google real quick. How many bushels somebody eats in a year? Because that's like a weird. That's like a weird measurement.
I can't say that, but I will say that out of every year, the United States makes around 93 million, bushels of wheat and soybeans every year, and that's not counting the ridiculous amount of corn we make. Literally, like a pound of corn from the field retails for 50 cents. We are talking about something that is industrially produced. And I apologize because most of that you don't eat. Most corn is not used for human consumption. It is used for anything from ethanol to high fructose corn syrup, which eventually you will eat, which, by the way, we should ban, but this is a whole other conversation, to cow feed, right? Some of this will come back into your diet in some short way or form, but over half of it won't.
Oh my God.
You're disgusted. What's up?
No, I'm checking out the math on it. So I was checking out the math of just Kansas. Kansas alone produces 300 million bushels of wheat. And if that was dedicated solely to the production of bread, it could feed the entire planet for a day, or it could feed 40 million people for a year.
Yeah.
So,
pardon me, I said million. I meant billion.
Yeah, and I was kind of wondering about the units of measurement, because I know like million to billion, it's like you kind of, I mix up my stats sometimes too, so it happens.
Happens.
Do we not plant wheat in the USA? Yeah. So sorry. Let me extrapolate this out, because people are probably lost in my autism right now. So what I'm kind of wondering is, let me explain what Sargon, and to a greater extent the ethnonats do, is they say that the Jews, the Israelis in particular, and then the Jews as an international faction,
cabal,
what they're doing is they are asking the goy, the non-Jews, in order to import the browns and the blacks, as I think Nick Fuentes endearingly calls them, cappuccino debt slaves, in order to mass import them into European countries. One, so we lose our sense of identity. And then two, we all become cappuccino debt slaves. You see a Mexican woman with a fat ass walking down the road. You forget that you're a nice white Christian boy who's only supposed to date Christian, white Christian people. And as a result, you have sex with a Catholic. You have, mixed mulatto children who all become, cappuccino debt slaves. That's what Nick Fuentes is railing about, and why, even though he's Mexican himself, I'm sure he's Castizo and, or Mestizo. And as a result, since he is pure Spanish blood, he doesn't want to dilute his pure Spanish blood with the African or the Middle Eastern or the, what's another person? The indigenous of the United States of America, right? And so having sex with a hot Latina woman is a cataclysm to these people. And so, hold on, I'm explaining their worldview. I'm not explaining my worldview.
I know. I laugh at this for a number of reasons. Like, hey, I'm gonna say it. I usually don't. Pussy's pussy, guys. Like enjoy it. Just enjoy. Okay. I usually don't become that. I don't.
With the most Chad thing ever said in Twitch and YouTube politics, because the truth is, like, so what's happened up until now? Sorry, just indulge me for 30 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've had to play so nice on Twitch and YouTube in order to like not talk about like race shit or like Jews or whatever, because everybody's really sensitive about like demographics and all that kind of shit. Well, since all the leftists came out like pro murder and pro terrorism and pro rape, I'm pretty sure that like people are a little bit less sensitive about the occasional slur or the description of Nick Fuentes' worldview. So anyways, so basically, like, brown people, black people, whatever, because they have like a lesser IQ, because they're not as productive, because of this, that, the reason, because of higher criminality, et cetera, et cetera. Basically we should all parallel into, at minimum, Christian societies, and at maximum, we shouldn't ethnically intermix. That is, to my understanding, that is the race realist, Christian nationalist, Groyper perspective. Then, when it comes to Sargon, what I see, this is what I see. I'm just going to tell you what I see. Sargon fans, you can correct me. You can send me clips of him talking about white pill shit. But this is what I see from the outside. He thinks that Britain is being overrun with people from the Middle East and North Africa. They're Muslim. They're hostile to the host nation. They have no sympathy or loyalty to Britain. Britain is too cucked to have any kind of assertion of British values. And so as a result, these are not a series of cultures and ethnicities that are actually being married together in a coherent national polity. These are parallel societies that are being forced into a country for the sake of economics. And this actually brings me all the way back to my point. I'm sorry for schizo posting for 5 minutes. But my point being that a lot of Christian nationalists and a lot of ethno-nationalists think that this is a malevolent plan by Jews to destroy the Goyim and to turn them all into slaves on behalf of Israel. Whereas I think what happened was a lot of technocratic capitalists looked at the math for how society would function with a baby bust, and they said, holy shit, the math doesn't work. What do we do? And then they're like, well, immigration is at least a stopgap to keep the models working while we try to figure out how to make a mixed market economy work when more people are retired than are working.
You hit it best in this last video that you were talking about with Nevin, but it's the technocrats largely are of that persuasion. It's not that the math doesn't even work out; it's that they know that their profits go into the tank. You know, that productivity to labor balance that we were talking about earlier. If that has to go back, or even remotely starts catching up, how much profit are you going to see out of these major corporate institutions that have been raking it in for the last 40 years? It's going to be a lot more like what we saw back in the 50s and 60s. I want that, but they sure as fuck don't. And don't get me wrong, I get them, but it's time for an ass whooping, in my opinion.
No, well, see, this is actually another interesting perspective as well, because if they're looking at the numbers, and I said very laissez-faire, very blasé, that what is the problem with Japan only focusing on the industries that are going to provide for its people, and as a result having enough food, having enough shelter, having enough electricity, and having enough entertainment to maintain its reducing population. That's what I said. Now, but if I was a corporation, or if I was, let's just corporation, that's the only people I'm really talking about. If I was a corporation and I was home to a certain market, then that market was going to, let's say I was the Funko Pop creator, and I knew that there was going to be a 50% reduction in the workers in Japan, then why wouldn't I lobby for immigrants? Because I basically know that if there's a demographic collapse in Japan, Funko Pops are going to be the first company that can't find anybody to hire, because nobody's interested in manufacturing Funko Pops when they need to put food on the table.
Ding.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's largely it.
Bro, like, I feel like I have been nibbling around this idea in like globalism and mass immigration and capitalism and demographic shifts and all that kind of stuff. I've been nibbling around this idea for, I think, a half decade. I kind of feel like I solved the puzzle in my own mind.
Good.
That's fucking bananas. No, because it's a solvable problem-ish.
Some of it is, some of it isn't. Like the United States, I'm not.
Corporations to go fuck themselves.
There's a level where it's coming. And like the problem is, like, you know, we can't pitch that to the right on the face, right? Because we get sold out as like, we're socialists, we're communism, whatever, right? But like the corporate ass kissing needs to stop. And I don't know where you feel about this one, because
that's the other problem, because they have all the concentrated wealth and power, so it's easy to buy you out.
Yes. And this is why, like, you told me this a year and a half ago, and you're like, you know, hey, look, I'm hoping to find like a dono sugar daddy to help me out. And I'm just like, Connor, you know, right?
They're
you know this, all right?
Everything I say,
yes, and they're not going to help you. Like they're not going to help you from the start.
The serious ones,
even the serious ones aren't going to, because there's only about like the people that I would call good faith in the corporate community.
Yeah,
is negligible. Like even if you find one, right? I'm gonna level with you. This person is not a corporate person, but you know them very well. They're good folks. Treat me very well, but they are part of that top 10% of millennials that are doing very well, and they don't see or feel that problems that you know that I'm going through, or maybe even to some degree you are. You remember our good friend Nate Dallin, right?
Of course, yeah.
Dude is fucking kicking ass and taking names, and I love the man, right? But it's also, you know, he does the same thing where it's like, hey, you know, every time I go to the airports are full. Like, you know, it's that detachment. They don't fucking get it. Like I don't know. Go ahead.
I think the Western world can sustain it. Okay, I think this is racist of me, but I'm just going to go for it.
Oh, this will be fine.
I think Europe, it's not even racist. It's like religiously bigoted. So,
Okay.
yeah. So I think that Europe is going to have a larger difficulty than the United States because the immigrant populations that they are largely recruiting from are from the Middle East and North Africa. And there is a legitimate cultural conflict between monotheistic, universalist, Abrahamic Islam and secular, hedonistic, nihilistic, atheist, agnostic, Christian, former Christian states. There's a cultural bridge here that is large. And so people can ignore those issues broadly, but there's going to be horrible cultural conflicts between these two groups. And then, and some of them are resolvable and some of them aren't. I think that the United States, because we have an immigrant pool largely, like, of course, we import from China and the Middle East and North Africa and all that kind of stuff. But let's be real. We pretty much take, like, all the smart motherfuckers who have, like, fucking degrees and shit. Like, those are the motherfuckers that we let in from the other parts of the world.
H-1Bs.
Yeah, basically. But our recruiting population for the cappuccino debt slaves, as Nick Fuentes would refer to them, is Hispanic immigrants from Central and South America. They're Christian. They speak Spanish.
Catholic.
They're colonial. They're a colonial power as well. There's a lot of cultural parallels here that I think can be resolved relatively easily.
Okay, so I'm going to go mask off for just all of this, okay? So here you go. The ethno-nats in the United States piss me off to a massive level because they act like, you know, Hispanics are largely like a completely different group with a different cultural tradition, yada, yada, yada. They're really not. Like 95% of everything you hold dear, they do too. They have a little bit of differences on like on the rule of law when it comes to like the balance of power and what we would think of as normal republicanism. Like we're talking about a lot of states that have mestizoism and we'll put it this way, like monopolistic power out the fucking ass. Literally, the richest person in the world is a Mexican because he runs all the telecoms throughout Central and South America. Right? No one talks about that. And like when it comes down to it, you have a lot of these places who are still holdovers of colonization from Spain back in the 1600s, because here you had to come into Delaware or Maryland or whatever. And then when the colonial charter came in and said, hey, you owe us taxes, we just pissed off. We just went in the woods and built our own thing, and they couldn't do shit about it. So they had to form institutions with us from the get-go that we wanted to participate in. In Spain, in the Spanish colonies, it was the exact opposite. We came in, conquered something, or not we, but they came in, conquered something, and they set it up on the same grounds. So where the United States and Canada built out a liberal model from its foundation, Spain basically continued the European feudal system throughout all of Southern and South America.
And what that really has like a kleptocratic, top-down, authoritarian influence on the culture and the chains of command and all that kind of stuff. And that's something that a lot of people talk about. I'll try to be brief, but a lot of people talk about that with like the Mexican Marines and the Special Forces and the law enforcement and all that kind of stuff, is you basically have like mid-level dudes who are super competent, and then you have like low-level dudes who are really eager to learn, but then you have like a knowledge and tactical and technical gap where a lot of the lower-level dudes don't learn. But the reason why they don't learn is because nobody trusts them, because everybody assumes they're fucking corrupt. And then the same thing with like the mid-level dudes. The mid-level dudes who are like competent, they stick to themselves because they can't trust anybody around them, because who knows who's actually competent and honest and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'll largely agree with that. There's some nuance in there, but that I'm not going to go into. But anyway, when it comes to Southern South America, their number one failure is just straight up that they have never adopted liberal ideals to a large extent. Some have done a little better than others. Unfortunately, most of the times they've tried to fire off a liberal revolution without any of these or throughout most of these countries, they failed. I think Panama is probably one of the most successful. Mexico's tried 3 times and failed. Literally, if you do have a revolution, the next round of kleptocrats tend to come in. And what's worse is that this is where we can actually throw some real political hay. Leftists fucking suck at maintaining a balance of power. And whether it is Venezuela, which is a great example of this, or whoever else that we want to put in the leftists, The problem is when they don't have these Republican traditions, yeah, for a while they can make things work because they do these like state welfare programs to where, oh, hey, we're going to actually give people education. You see the rise of, you see like the average person actually do better because they get some of these things. But it becomes a kleptocratic mess from a leftist perspective to where, yeah, Venezuela isn't a socialist country or a communistic country, but it's made of the same blood. It's made of the same material, right? The same moral ethos is behind it.
Yeah, I don't even buy the Venezuela is not a socialist country thing. So the reason why I don't buy this whole like appeal to history. So I will go with the appeal to history and the definitional purity for the sake of having a conversation with a leftist. Yeah, okay. So for the sake of conversation, if they're like, well, in Venezuela, they just did some guaranteed food programs and housing programs, but there were like a lot of shortages and they never really fully fulfilled the promises and all that kind of shit. And then for the sake of conversation, I'll be like, okay, they did not achieve the decommodification of basic human need and workers owning the means of production, right? But if you look at the elected party, it was socialist. What did they talk about? Economic justice, redistributivism, making sure that everybody had food, making sure everybody had shelter, making sure that everybody, like, you only worked if you needed to, and all that kind of bullshit, and all the poor, and all the blah, 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 fucking blah. So for me, I think you've seen me in the Twitch and YouTube political sphere where I'll concede to the leftists that it wasn't real socialism or communism. I really only do that rhetorically so we can move on in a conversation with the leftists. I still view it's the same thing because it's the same moral ethos, of the ideology.
Yeah, it is. And this is where like people look at me and like, oh, why can I not support leftism? It's like, this is because this is the end result that you consistently get. The morality is not compatible with the human condition. It sucks at maintaining it.
And if somebody like Demon Mama or whatever, they're like, well, I'm an anarcho-communist and I want to move out to the woods of the Pacific Northwest and run a commune of 30 people where we trade chicken eggs and duck eggs and raise pigs and raise cows and we sew our own clothes and all that kind of bullshit, and we actually don't have money, and somebody just sells like bars of soap online on an Etsy store in order to pay the property tax. I don't give a shit. God bless. Go fucking do it. Live in a moneyless, stateless, classless society with you and your fucking polycule. I don't give a flying fuck. But don't try to take that weirdo fucking lefty Star Trek utopian bullshit and try to put it on the rest of society through the barrel of a gun. That's kind of my problem. But bringing this all the way back. So I probably should have written these down, but didn't we talk about? Did we talk about asset inflation, commodity inflation, and wage or labor inflation? Were those the three that we've done so far? So
we've done three.
And is the last one monetary?
Ding. And it's the least correlative one with inflation consistently. If you look at when we printed money back into, if you look at when we printed money back in 2008 and 2009, right? We did almost the same scale as what we did last time. Does anyone remember ridiculous inflation in 2010 and 2011? No, don't.
But wasn't that because of the velocity of money?
It has a hand in it, sure, but like the thing that we saw, at least in my mind, is that out of the last 10 times, and it's not just the Americans that do this, right? Everyone tends to do this kind of thing. It's like normalized monetary policy. We print money and shove a shitload of money into the system to lubricate the system and get it going again. That's kind of what central banks do now. The reason why, in the last 10 times that anyone has done it, it only tends to fire off an inflationary boom once. It's literally got a 10% accuracy rating. And the reason why is, as stupid as this sounds, one, the demand for money is incredibly elastic in a lot of regards, because basically if you can get money, you want it, right? So you're going to have a constant demand that is really fucking or just constantly up there, right? So just shoving a bunch of money in there doesn't innately really change the price all that much. The other part here is that excuse me. Oh, I cannot hold it together.
You got the RSV, bro. I passed it through the fucking.
I don't know if it's long COVID or whatever, because I actually had it for the first time this year, and my lungs have not been the best since I've had it. So.
Just out of curiosity, real briefly, how did you do? Did you Was it a week? Was it 2 weeks? Was it 3
It
days?
was a
What
week.
was it?
It was a week before I could actually like go back to work and do shit. It was 3 weeks before I actually felt normal in any kind of regard.
Okay. Now back to fiscal inflation or monetary inflation. So my argument or my instinct when you're saying like we didn't see this in 2008, if it was just print money, less economic activity, why didn't we see that? And the reason why I would posit, I'm not saying this is accurate, this is just my gut opinion, is that as far as I know, almost all of the money went to absorbing toxic assets. And what I mean by that is literally like the fucking Wall Street bros were playing all those games. If you've seen, there's 2 movies about it. One of them is called The Big Short, I think. And then the other one is Margin Call. I like both of them. They're fantastic. Margin Call, I never wanted to watch because it looked like the most dry, boring shit ever. But if you actually want to see what like a finance firm looks like during a cataclysmic financial meltdown, I think they did a phenomenal job like displaying that and acting it out. And then The Big Short just describes the economic collapse of 2008 from the perspective of the people who were able to profit from it, and they make it like fun and sexy and easy to understand. But my understanding is that the financial bros on Wall Street, they basically gave out a bunch of toxic loans to a whole bunch of people. They took all those toxic loans, they put them into securities that were rated higher than they were technically worth. Then they traded on the value of those securities and did bets back and forth on whether or not mortgages would get paid to an exponential degree, where people were taking exponential bets on houses getting paid. And because mortgages typically get paid, they were selling those securities as if they were rock solid, but they were actually dog shit. And so what happened... Right. Yeah, so what happened when a bunch of strippers, because this is the example in the movie, when a bunch of strippers who were paying for 3 or 4 houses at one time, but who had no idea how a mortgage fucking worked. And so they put a down payment on a house, and then they were just like, oh, I don't have to pay this for 3 years, sweet. And then they got hit with a variable interest rate. So their interest, they thought they were going to be paying $1,000 a month on a condo in Daytona Beach and $1,000 a month on a 4-bed, 4-bath in fucking Orlando or Miami or whatever. When the variable interest rate hit and they went from $1,000 to $4,000, they said, I can't afford this. I'm not paying it. And as a result, you had like, I don't know, maybe not a third of the housing market collapse overnight, but you not only had a large portion of the housing market collapse overnight, but then you had the corresponding financial investment bets that you became worthless overnight.
I don't want to relitigate 2008 because we can be here all night just on that one topic, and it's a fucking nightmare. Like, it's not even for nerds, it's not fun to talk about anymore. It's just a headache. Yeah. But largely what we had is that we had
my 3-minute summary.
It wasn't bad. Like, here, let me get to the meat and the potatoes of 2008, right? 2008, what started it was exactly what Connor had, and then what we had was what we call a deflationary spiral, which is you have the banking system, the housing market crashed, and the loans that the banking system was using as part of that all went into default. Because of that, the banking system started to go in collapse, and Lehman Brothers went into the fucking White House literally in the end of 2007, went up to Bush and said, hey, we need $1 trillion or the entire banking system collapses within 72 hours. And if you all know about your banking, right, that's everything from your debit cards and your credit cards all the way up into, your business operating loans to make sure that you get paid on Thursday, right, or whenever you get paid. So we saw a deflationary spiral to where even the first order effects happened because people lost consumer confidence. They stopped buying things. They started saving money. They started hoarding stuff. Thankfully, it wasn't toilet paper that time, but it was later. You get people spending less, saving more, which I actually think is a good thing. But if you do it all at one time, you basically make it to where the guys down the chain, if you're buying TVs less, the people who make the TVs don't have a job anymore. And so that's what we call a deflationary spiral, where it just spirals consistently, where you knock out market after market after market. We doubled fucking doubled in 2009 the amount of money in circulation. This is USM0. We went from about $1 trillion in circulation, we bumped it up to 2 within the span of a year. We have never done a doubling before or after, and we didn't see hardly any inflation. Because even if you get into what Connor's assets we're talking about, the majority of it was shoved in the economy. People used it to spend to cover their asses, what have you. But people needed the money. And as long as it continues to move, you're largely good. The problem with what happened this last time, and I'll just give you some details. To 2014 to 2015, we increased it 30%. In 2021, or 2020, 2021, we increased it 40%.
Are you talking about money supply?
Yes.
Okay.
The only reason we saw it this time was not because we printed a shitload of money. It was because all of the things that we have relied on consistently to kind of get us back up to speed failed. Because China may be the world's market in building everything, but China doesn't have a vaccine. China doesn't know how to handle COVID outside of locking people into their apartment blocks and welding the door shut.
This makes a shitload of sense to me. And the reason why is because that money, the money that came out, the stimulus checks or whatever, shaved dog ass. I went to Renfest today with Sansol, Peepo happy. I don't know what that means, but I'm happy you got to hang out with Sansol. I hope your penis is happy. That's cool.
Oh my God.
So he said Peepo happy. I don't know what that's in reference to. So,
okay.
So basically, for me, I don't know. We got like two $1,400 checks or whatever the fuck, like every 6 months, and then the wife was on unemployment, which was like because she worked as like a waitress or some shit, and the Florida system was all fucked up. So basically, she made like $1,600 or $2,000 a month. And so she got paid like $300 a month from the government for like 6 months or something like that. It was not a lot of money.
But California was dipping it out to where, oh, hey, what's that? You make $2,000 a month? Oh, cool. We're going to pay you $3,000.
Yeah, that's fucking insane. Yeah. Right. So we got paid $300 a month. I'm pretty sure the state of Florida is still solvent, by the way. Like, I'm pretty sure they covered their bases. So anyways, point being that we got like a little bit of extra cash or whatever. And then we just figured it out where we started consuming less. Like we got rid of our second car, we got rid of our second insurance. We budgeted more aggressively. We took advantage of the programs that let us defer our mortgage for a bit. And then we figured out, how can I make enough money in order to make ends meet? And I was very lucky. I survived. But I think that a lot of people that money went right back out the door, right? Because they did not have the ability in order to survive. So they took that money, they put it right back out. So what makes more sense than monetary inflation, although I do still think that there could be a factor in here somewhere, asset inflation. We have not been manufacturing housing, to my knowledge, since the 2008 collapse. We just haven't.
Not to the degree we were.
Yeah. And then, although, like you said, there's all these new markets that are popping up because a lot of people are probably escaping high-cost states.
They're trying to do what they can. The problem is that
I don't want to tangent just yet because that's the assets, right? A lot of people are stuck in cities with assets that are appreciating like crazy, like the real estate market or whatever. And there is not, Washington, California, Florida is built out, almost completely built out. New York City is almost completely built out. Texas had a boom that then got built out. Then they had a natural disaster that made the insurance go up. So they're built out. Although there's plenty of more land in Texas. That's not the problem. It's just that the land that's left in Texas is farmland that doesn't have any infrastructure. So you would be like a half decade to a decade out of building more suburbs in Texas. If you want to live in Dallas, or if you want to live in Austin, or if you want to live in a city that's already populated, that city's already built out. Yeah. So you have asset inflation out the ass, and then also with commodity inflation, that makes a shitload of sense to me, because if you're reliant on international manufacturing, which is coming to a standstill because of not having a vaccine, you have China locking, which is like the world's factory. You have them locking up their people for however fucking long with the zero COVID policy, and then you have the United States basically with like whole sectors of the economy going home, and they're either working from home or not working at all. Then the amount of product that you are manufacturing that people need to consume is not being made. And so as a result, you have people competing over the product, and then you have commodity inflation. So yeah, so asset and commodity is already covered. Finance or monetary, we already covered. What's the last one? What was the last one?
Monetary was the last one. We talked labor. You missed labor in there, but we already talked about
and
it.
Then, and then labor, we have a little bit of that because of the decrease in the labor pool because we've been hammering down on immigration and also...
boomers are retiring and Gen Z is small. So we're actually entering a good...
We kind of... Didn't we have some disincentivization with immigration as well with Trump, where like Central and South Americans weren't coming as aggressively as they were before?
We doubled, Title 42, we doubled our deportation rate. We just...
So we had like a perfect inflationary storm.
Yes, we did. And I called it, and I said it didn't matter who was going to win 20. They were setting themselves up for a disaster in 24. I'm amazed that, I wish I had it still on. I looked for it in my own videos. I can't find it. Apparently, I still don't have the footage from 2020 anymore. I wish I did. I guess I'm an idiot, whatever.
But you basically said whoever owned 2020 to 2024 was going to be politically fucked because they were going to inherit one of the worst economic shitstorms in American history.
Yes. I fucking called it. I was right. The problem that I didn't get, and we still got politics to cover, is that the Democrats have done extremely well considering how much the deck has been stacked against them, while the Republicans have just been floundering out of their ass.
That's just because, correct me if, I don't know about your perspective. Mm-hmm. Is it not just abortion?
Abortion did a lot. Abortion did a huge thing, and I fucking called that too, and that is on video, motherfuckers.
But Trump and abortion, wouldn't that be like the two biggest things that are like buoying the Democrats? Because typically, I think even Destiny said he was like oil pilled, where like the president is like, if you look at oil prices or how the economy is doing or whatever, then it almost always correlates with whether or not the president wins. So
more often than not, yes.
Yeah, so if Trump was around for air shots, you can follow Counter Connor. That's my editor's new profile. It's my fucking profile, let's be real. My 20K profile got nuked because I posted a Squidward "we're gonna kill you" meme. Very upsetting. 20K account down the drain. Anyways. So the perfect inflationary storm. But like, it's so interesting to me because Trump was catching the beginning of that by the time he left. And then he was also unpopular for a few other reasons.
He can't shut his mouth.
But then Biden caught that fucking economic downturn right on the fucking chin. So he's been getting fucking walloped. And it's a question about whether or not the economy can come back in any capacity that's impressive in the next 365 days that might allow him to maintain the presidency. Yeah.
So there's so much of those that I want to get into.
Out from the election too?
Yes, we are. We are now less than 350 days.
Biden hasn't even started campaigning yet, has he?
He doesn't need to. Up until last month.
Is his presidency the campaign?
Partially, yes. So this is what I'm hearing out from that community that actually talks to me, because they're unfortunately they're in a shitstorm right now. Yeah. Up until last month, they largely weren't even going to start campaigning until the beginning of the year because they figured, one, the Democratic nomination was on lock, so they didn't have to fight anybody. But more importantly, they did the math on who would win in a Trump-Biden matchup, because Trump is still pulling ahead by like 30 points against DeSantis, which is the next highest competitor, right? Yeah. So they're just kind of locking in their sights and saying, all right, cool. Trump, or basically 2020 redux. What's changed? Fucking nothing. And that's the calculation they're having. They're literally saying, hey, look, everything that is going in the calculations was pro-Democrat, especially after abortion got hit. And so they okay, just recap real quick. 2020 Trump overperformed, because if everything was just by economic numbers, Trump should have had 40% of the electorate vote for him. He got 48. So like there was levels to where the Democrats were like, oh shit. But then 2022 came out, and by the numbers, the Democrats should have lost their ass by a good 10 points, and they pulled it out by 0.5.
Wait.
On an off-year election.
They should have lost their ass, but they pulled it out by 0.5 above performance, or 0.5 above they retained a majority or whatever the fuck.
They retained the majorities in where they needed to, in the Senate and in the in particularly state legislatures and governorships. And
but correct me if I'm
they were.
wrong. Well, so I kind of wanted to ask this. For me, if you look at the American cultural discourse, there's two things that we endlessly fight over, and it's guns and abortion. These are just the two hot button issues in the American psyche for whatever fucking reason. I think it's because they're the most bloody ones, right? And so, what's that?
Go on.
Well, I was going to say,
yeah.
Roe v. Wade, the repeal of Roe v. Wade at the Supreme Court level, for me, I thought that stood, up until it actually happened, I thought that stood a snowball's chance in hell of actually happening. Reason being, the Supreme Court, basically all the nominees were like, I want to let, current fucking legislation stand. I think precedent is an important part of the Constitution, or an important part of legal standing and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The reason why Roe was a disaster is because, I'm going to fuck with people right now. Preserving Roe was the conservative stance. And I say conservative as maintaining the status quo. Most people were used to it. Most people thought it was normal. The left saw it as a cultural victory that they achieved 2 generations ago. The only people who largely wanted to undo this were part of the radical right. And while I do have serious problems with abortion, and I know you do too, we have to convey to our audience that most of the people in this country were happy with Roe. And they would have stuck with that, and they were like, that was okay. When they opened this box, it was Pandora's box, and we found out consistently, which I called it, this country on social issues is more left. On economic issues, it's more right. A lot of people do believe more in free market capitalism, but they also believe in, people being a bunch of hippies and doing what they want when it comes to the body politic writ large. And I'm having serious trouble getting to my neighbors and saying, hey, look, I totally get where you're seeing shit. And you're like, all right, cool. What is all this race baiting shit you see from the left? What is all these things about education and finance and all these other things that you fucking hate? 100% behind you on this, on the moral level. But the suburbanites are the bellwethers for the country. What do the suburbs think about the body politic? And the real part is, suburban women are a huge voting group who say, look, I don't need to worry about transgenderism because my sex no longer matters to me because I'm an educated woman. I can work in a Fortune 500 company and there's nothing you can do to stop me. So a lot of these issues that the right wing, even like right wing women, fucking despise and will vote vehemently against, but suburban women, which are the moderates, will vote like what your wife does. And we've already had that conversation.
Can I say some wild shit? So what's so funny about the like the chill shit is, like, you would think that if you go onto fucking Twitter or whatever, that like every conservatives are just endlessly celebrating about the death of Roe v. Wade. And I do have some people in my chat who are celebrating it. And by the way, like you said, you and I both have our moral objections to abortion. I think 18 weeks is like a reasonable thing. I think that even before 18 weeks, it's morally wrong. But
you can live with it.
But since half of the country views this as like a fucking human right or whatever the fuck, then I at least want the fetus that's being ripped apart to not have a fucking central nervous system, so it's not actually feeling pain or experiencing consciousness when it's being fucking terminated, right? So that's like my compromise with people who view this as a human right or whatever. So yeah, in Jab is saying abortion on demand is crazy. Yeah, like fucking up until viability or up until the date of delivery is fucking, it's infanticide basically. But I had my conservative mother, who, when I was in college and she was like, hey, are you like pro-choice or pro-life? I was like, well, I mean, I'm pretty much pro-choice. Like, I'm not the one carrying a kid. Like, I'm good with it, whatever the law of the land is. She was like, you'll feel different when you have kids. I do feel different now that I have kids. But even my giga conservative Christian mom was like, Republicans have fucked up by repealing Roe versus Wade and then passing 6-week abortion bans without caveats. That is my giga conservative Christian conservative mom. And the reason why is not because she wants like babies to be aborted or whatever. It's because she was hearing all the fucking horror stories about people who needed exceptions, like they had medical complications or whatever. And then the doctors were so freaked out by the state legislation that had gone through after Roe versus Wade that they basically let women fucking like bleed in the hospitals for fucking 6 hours before they took a medical intervention. So that's what I'm saying, where it's like, yeah, conservatives, like, I'm
Republican.
This is like the
Republicans.
sorry,
Go ahead, please. I'm okay. Republicans fuck their moral compass up on this own one, because as Republicans,
You say that.
we no seriously. Let me hit this. Republicans, we admit that we don't like we don't like excuse me. We don't like abortion. We think there's moral problems with it. We all agree on this. But we're also the party that says, hey, look, we're scared of government. We don't like government to come in and just beat the living shit out of people to do certain things because, hey, we're afraid of the tyranny of the majority and whatnot. And then we actually institute it by force in like the most fucking active social issue you possibly could hit it on, and we look like the authoritarian tyrants. Yes, I'm cool with outlawing abortion in certain things, but you have to have some exceptions. You have to show people you're using this law in a reasonable, like constructed way that is morally grounded out. And Nikki Haley said it best on the debate stage. We need to show that we're against abortion without killing mom, and we don't look like those people. And that's why we've lost on this issue completely.
I want to address EOD 696 because he's like, there's no woman who's bled out in an emergency room. I agree with you, EOD. If I was imprecise with my language, allow me to say it. The horror story was not that the hospital allowed the mother to die. She didn't die. What happened was the doctor was such a fucking pussy that instead of intervening medically, because obviously I'm pretty sure every single state has the exemption of like life of the mother, right? I'm pretty sure they all have that exemption of like life of the child, life of the mother is the exemption for abortion. The doctor, instead of not being a pussy and just performing the fucking surgery, he got on a phone with a fucking lawyer in order to litigate it about whether or not he would be able to perform it and what the latitudes of it was. So yeah, sure, maybe it's fucking propaganda, maybe it's a story out of Mississippi, maybe it's some fucking dumb fuck doctor. I'm just saying that that's the fucking story that came out. And by the way, that there were fucking stupid motherfuckers who were saying like an ectopic pregnancy should be carried to term. That's because they didn't know what ectopic was, because an ectopic pregnancy is not fucking viable anyways, and it would kill the mother. So that's all I'm fucking saying is that like ignorant motherfuckers were saying some wild shit. That's really what I'm saying. But anyways, but like for me, I think Republicans, if they've been talking about ending abortion for, I don't know, like fucking since I was born, I think before I was born, since the institution of Roe, they've been talking about it, right? And so for them to do this, this would be like the Democrat equivalent of passing an assault weapons ban or getting some serious gun control through, right? And so as a result, you cannot expect to not have a electoral fallout after you achieve a major controversial piece of legislation that's been a part of your party's tent pole for decades.
This would have been the equivalent of mandating that if any child under the age of 18, if they so chose, without their parents' permission, could have a transition nationwide. That was the equivalent of what the right pulled off. And they didn't. I don't think they realized it.
Say it again, because I don't think I tracked the analogy.
This is the equivalent of the Democrats passing a law that would say that any child under the age of 18, without permission of their parents, would receive a transitionary operation of their own choosing without their parents' permission, right? And would get it. That is the equivalent of how absolutely toxic what the right pulled off. Part of it was PR. Straight up, because like we could have marketed this way better, but it was also like I said in the beginning, we're kind of going full circle here. When DeSantis went up on national television and said, "I am proud that I passed a 6-week abortion ban in the state of Florida," there's just the general's gone.
See, for me, I would have to listen to the fucking sentence immediately after that. I think I've come to peace with the fact that in the primary people run to the flanks and in the general people run to the center. So like, and also DeSantis is a political operative. So I would expect, let's say Trump has like a major health episode. Let's say that he actually gets indicted, convicted, and sentenced to a confinement sentence. And then you see him dipping in the poll numbers or whatever. Yeah, sorry. There's people arguing about fucking... Hold on, sorry. Only Amber Bill, because I pay attention to my chat. How many bad takes of conservatism have you heard in the past 10 minutes? I'm at like 5. Feel free to write them down. I will be happy to address them in turn.
We can dress them together if you want.
Sure. Although I want to point something out cool to you. Did we start at 9 p.m. EST?
We may have. But we really started at 9:30, to be honest.
Okay. So well, either way, I think it's impressive. We have been talking for 2 hours straight.
Yep.
And it's been, for me, it's been like 30 seconds. And I think that's just because we have good rapport and good flow and all that kind of stuff. But anyways.
We do.
But I do need to, because it's 11:30, I do have work tomorrow. I do have to wake up with the kiddos. I do have to get them to school and all that kind of stuff. We kind of need to be wrapping it up, basically. But we can finish the topic and then do some outros. So when it comes to this, I think you just have to be able to take the electoral hit. And then my perspective on this upcoming election is it's really up in the air. So if we see like an economic stabilization, if we see things start to get better on the ground, if we see like the Israel-Palestine conflict resolve in a way, one way or the other, if things start to stabilize, then I think Biden has a shot. But if we are 1 year away, if we're 365 days or 362 days away from election, and Israel and Gaza's on fire, fucking gas is fucking higher than it used to be, the economy's in the fucking shitter, commodity fucking inflation is dog shit, people can barely afford their groceries and their fucking rent and all that kind of stuff, I think Trump went from non-viable to having a real shot.
Well, I'll put it this way. I would if you had asked me up until September who was going to win, I would have said it was a slam dunk for Biden. Because none of the math had really changed. One of the best things that actually turned out to happen for the Biden administration was that they came into office just as everything was going to shit, in real ways, because they were on the slope of the end part of COVID, where we were starting to kind of pick back up, but also everything ramped up when they were just getting into office. And so everything that we've seen during this administration is kind of normal now, and you have the normalization factor there. So people are used to the higher gas prices and all this compared to what they were back then. And I think that's actually paving over some numbers that people aren't paying attention to. The also thing is the majority.
There's something,
hey, I've heard you.
There's something fucking ridiculous in chat.
Oh, God.
It's fine, because this is
Go
important.
Ahead. Okay.
Only Amber Bill. As Tiberius ignored every one of my observations. Yeah, I would rather these guys vote than Hassan. But their understanding of people to the right of them is no better than Stardust's. That is fucking insane. That is one of the craziest fucking sentences that has ever been said in my chat. And I've seen some crazy fucking sentences. So what I would like you to do, because worked with Lauren Southern, worked under Tim Pool, talked to Nick Fuentes, talked to JF Gary Epi, talked to fucking... what's that fucking guy?
This is only Mr. Bill. Oh, fuck. This dude's toxic as shit.
Is he trolling?
No, he's not trolling. He's just... I'm not going to
Not your favorite?
Let's just say he's been banned out of multiple communities. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, talking to people doesn't mean you align with them. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't mean that I ally with them. I understand them, though. So saying that I don't understand these people, I think is fucking insane. Because I've had like hour-long conversations with all these people. They've articulated their worldview to me pretty aggressively, and I can typically repeat it back. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but Mr. Bill,
you're fine.
Feel free to articulate in chat in an extended sentence the ways in which I don't understand people on the right wing. And I'm sorry, Tiberius, please continue.
You're fine. Anyway, I'll just pick up where I left off. We're looking at where we're going into for the 24 election. I think Trump has not gained in any measurable facet, right? There's no one who was already predisposed to vote for Trump already that has been added to that coalition. Whether it be the indictments, whether it just be the conditions of the economy, I don't think anything's changed in favor of him. And if anything, it's probably gotten worse. Biden was riding solid up until October, and that was whenever his coalition started to split over Israel-Palestine. If there is anything that's actually on deck right now that will sink that, it's that. Because the left, you talked about this, the leftists are openly threatening mutiny, and if the leftists don't show up, you're in a fight where the leftists stay home, The moderate Republicans vote for Biden because they like him more than Trump, but who actually has the bigger numbers in that calculus? And a lot of people are trying to crunch those numbers, and the real conversation here, it's way too close for like you're talking about elections going into literally 3 weeks later because they have to do recounts.
Yeah, it's gonna be terrible. I think I'm with you. The fact that I think you're right. I just don't know how much of a chunk Israel Palestine is going to take. Now, the thing about it is the lefties on Twitter always bark super hard, right? They always do. And so it's really hard to gauge electoral result from leftist fucking fury on Twitter. But I would say that if their fury is 10%, if their bite is 10% as effective as their bark, then as a Democrat, I would be concerned. And the reason being is because all the Muslims, all the Middle Eastern and North African immigrants that you brought over into the United States thinking that they were going to vote Democrat for the rest of their lives, they see Israel fucking taking Gaza, justifiably, by the way. I think Israel's justified in what it's doing. I don't like all the fucking kids getting blown to fucking shit, but whatever. I think that demographic could stay home, and they could encourage a bunch of leftist sympathizers to stay home as well. And if you have progressives, leftists, and Muslim, Middle Eastern, and North African immigrants staying home, that's not a large percentage, but considering, wasn't the last election pretty fucking close too? Like in a healthy chunk of states?
By the percentage of population, it had a decent margin. Like we really think everyone showed up to that election. Yeah, electoral. It came down to like 3 different states that were like on the margin of ass, right? So, Pennsylvania blew everyone.
Wasn't Arizona it was like 50,000 or something?
Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and Wisconsin were fucking neck and neck. What really amazed a lot of people was that the Blues pulled Pennsylvania and Michigan back from the brink from what we saw in 2016.
Yeah.
So let me run you the math here. I'm going to say it, like, whatever the Democrats have been able to pull off in Pennsylvania, just lock those 2 down, right? Like, they're technically supposed to be states in play, but you can already just treat it up. They're probably going to win those states, right? Mm-hmm. Unless the leftist coalition is way bigger than even I think it is. If you put those states in the blue mark and you don't put in, and you still remain Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia as the states that are the toss-ups, the Democrats are still already up to 260, which means they just need 2 of them if you're having Nevada win. But if they get Wisconsin, they win. They get Georgia alone, they win. They get Arizona, they win. The only one that they can win and not put it over the top is Nevada. Well, what's just the odds here that Democrats can't pull off 1 state of this coalition that they need versus the Republicans need to queen sweep and get all 4?
Yeah, especially with Trump. He's such a fucking wild card. There's no fucking way that he's not going to say wild shit. There's no fucking way that even if he doesn't spend any jail time, there's no way he's walking away from all these indictments unscathed. Literally the only thing that I understand what you just said. I understand the probabilistic analysis, and I'm with you there. When it comes to this shit, I'm not counting anything until I fucking see it, because obviously that's what happened in fucking 2016. And then also, I think Trump's such a fucking wild card that you just have no idea. And Biden's brain is melting while the economy also melts. That's rough, Well, and sorry, go ahead.
I'll give it for this in the economy. The only people that are really feeling absolutely shitty right now are the people that are like progressive as hell in the middle of Atlanta or New York, right? Who they have to pay like higher rents or whatever, but they're not going to move. So they're out of play in my calculus. Or it's largely, rural people out in the sticks that are like, wow, that fucking extra $1 per pound on my steak really is starting to fucking hurt because all the things are, up 20%, even though we've seen eggs come down, we've seen milk come down, we've seen everything kind of go back to a more normal thing, but they're still up 10% on norm compared to what we were looking at before COVID. So everyone who's feeling the hurt's already, in my opinion, economically already vested. So that doesn't change much of the calculation at all. The question is, who's actually up in play that is going to make the numbers change? the leftists, if they don't show up, put some places in play. But it, I don't know. Like, is it going to put Michigan? Is it going to put Michigan?
Let's go! Please clap.
Memes aside, does the leftist coalition not showing up make it to where Detroit doesn't put up the numbers to where Michigan's in play again?
Right.
Possibly. I don't know. Like that again. People are trying to run some numbers.
We were just talking about Dearborn in chat. Somebody was saying like, oh, Connor supports genocide in Gaza, and I'm like, well, I also support moving the state of Israel to Wyoming, so there's that. And then somebody,
you should have gave the Jews Vegas, okay?
Yeah, and then fucking EOD being a fucking smartass, he was like, why wouldn't you move it to Dearborn, Michigan? And I was like, all the Muslims, lol. Yeah, there's too many fucking Muslims in fucking Gaza and the West Bank, and there's too many Muslims in Dearborn. We gotta move it to fucking butt fucking nowhere. Anyways, so the point is that we're fucked. It's up in the air. It's interesting. A lot of people are capitalizing off of everyone's black pills. I don't want to do that. I want to tell the audience the truth as I see it, and that's the best I can do. So, I'm losing my voice. I have to be up in 7 hours, and I need to help take care of the kids and do some bedtime rituals. Even though it's midnight, they're already asleep, but they're sleeping in the wrong spots. I got to move them around the house. So I got 40 people on YouTube. I got 35 people on Twitch. Share your final thoughts and where people can find you with the good folks at home.
All right, so if you guys liked what I had to say, or if you find me interesting, Tiberius D on Twitch and YouTube. I've also got a lot of other stuff there, but I got to reboot most of my stuff, like my TikTok and whatnot. But yeah, it's good to have you back here, Connor. Just get in the chat. I think we still have a couple of things on the list to check off, so we might have to reschedule another one. But yeah, definitely feel free to check me out. I do some more of the numbers and get into the political nuance of what electoral calculus is, because people don't do that. They're just like, oh, my neighbors, they really think Trump's gonna win. I'm like, yeah, but your neighbors aren't people who live in downtown Atlanta who think you're an evil piece of shit. Put the numbers together and look where it goes. It's kind of interesting. So my final thoughts on this is that the left coalition's bigger. If the right wants to be serious about electoral politics, we need to have a growth mindset, and we need to figure out what are we willing to change or get rid of, and what are we not. Economic conservatism's kind of losing right now in some stats, but social conservatism getting its ass kicked, outside of the fact that unless you have a bunch of people going around saying we're here, we're queer, and we're coming for your kids, it just doesn't really register for most folks. And as much as you can play that clip from TikTok over and over again, it only works for so long. The Republicans really need to up their game on maturing the MAGA movement into something that actually can be effective, but also Republican. And I stress that very strongly. It's not a Republican movement. It's a very populist movement that wants to put... I'm just going to say it. It wants to turn Trump into the American Julius Caesar, and I am dead opposed to this.
Straight up. Yeah, straight up. And like I know the gentleman who was disagreeing with me earlier... I invite anybody to watch the state attorneys on the January 6th commission talk about Trump and what he was doing with the lawyers and what he wanted to do and all that kind of shit. It's pretty rough. Basically the liberal wine moms, they were right to not like Trump that much. So what I would say though, in reference to kind of closing up, my name's Connor. 95% of my channel views are on Counterpoints 40K, where I break down the animations from Warhammer 40,000. We kind of caught up with all the stuff from Games Workshop, so we're going to go back and we're going to break down some of the older stuff that is with poor audio and not as good of lore and all that kind of stuff. Then I'll, of course, be breaking down Games Workshop stuff going forward when it comes out, and I'm also funding my own fan animations out of pocket, and I got some side projects. I'm doing some, this is going to be a road eventually. I'm going to texture it, but basically I'm doing terrain pieces that I'm 3D printing into a tile system to try to build terrain, and I'll build buildings as well. And eventually we're going to bring that to the channel. when it comes to politics, down in the description below, there's 2 other channels. There's Counterpoints, which is an essay channel, which is just going to be neglected. I've given up on it. Not that I don't want to do it eventually and do it eventually full time, but I have to give up on high quality essays for now. But Counterfire, eventually, when Brianna Wu is no longer depressed and or has COVID and or running serious events, we will be doing a weekly show with her. And then also we'll be posting conversations such as this that we've had with Tiberius D tonight. So I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who showed up. I have parasocial love for each and every one of you in my heart. Money is more appreciated than your time and attention, but I do love your time and attention. Patreon.com/counterpoints or become a YouTube member. Love you guys. Anything else before we dip out, Ty?
No, that's it. You have the outro down better than I do. I need to get back in the game a little bit more.
All right, well, harvest season's over, so it's time to get back in the game. So
you're damn right. I've been doing the best I can. I've been hanging out with Prime when I can. I'm trying to get Wick to invite me on again, but I need to expand out. Like the community has kind of separated. You're dealing with people like Brianna Wu, which I've never met or heard about until like very recently. I might need a little help in just doing some networking. So if you're willing to do that, that'd be great.
No, I got you, bud. And also I appreciate the offer in reference to Arium. So I was supposed to talk to him this weekend, but I need to talk to him again. So I'll talk to him sometime this week. Brianna Wu is fucking insane. Well, so is Tim Pool, bud. So him and I, EOD, I appreciate you coming over from the documentary, but I don't know if you're gonna like everything I have to say about Tim Pool, because basically when it was the Civil War discourse in he had a video recently where he was talking to somebody about civil wars. Everything that the other guy said is basically what I wanted to say to Tim Pool for the past 2 fucking years. Because I think like Tim Pool would go off on a tangent where it's like, here's all the reasons why we're 2 seconds away from a civil war. And he would be like, yeah, but here's all the fucking factors that you're missing. And this is why it's not going to go down the way that you think it's going to go down. So I really appreciated that guy talking to Tim in a much more tactful and polite way than I would have. But anyways.
Is all the Q&A over there for you?
Yes, relatively speaking, but also I don't want to invite more because I need to fuck off. I need to go to bed. Get you. All right. Parasocial love to everybody at home. Parasocial love to you, Tiberius /real love. Have a fantastic night, everybody.
You too.